Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Tonight I've got some absolutely wild Reddit stories for you. Alright, let's jump into the first story. So, my cousin Emma got engaged about a year ago to this guy named Derek. I wasn't particularly close with Emma. We saw each other at family gatherings, exchanged pleasantries, that sort of thing. But when the invitation arrived, it came with a personal note asking me to be part of the bridal party. I was surprised, honestly. We hadn't hung out one-on-one in probably 5 years. I should have trusted my gut right then. The first red flag came during the initial bridal party meeting. Emma gathered all 6 bridesmaids at her apartment and handed out folders. Actual folders. Inside was a typed 10-page document outlining our responsibilities and expectations. I'm talking itemized lists, timelines, budget breakdowns, and a section titled Conduct Standards. One of the other bridesmaids, Jess, laughed and said, "This is a joke, right?" Emma didn't laugh back. The document included things like mandatory attendance at every wedding-related event, no exceptions. There were 2 dress fittings, 3 cake tastings, a venue tour, a flower arrangement session, the bachelorette party, the rehearsal dinner, and something called a vision boarding brunch. Missing any event would result in removal from the bridal party. But here's where it got truly wild. The bridesmaid dresses were going to cost $450 each. Emma had chosen this specific designer because, in her words, only luxury fabrics photograph well. She also expected us to pay for our own hair and makeup on the wedding day, another $200, and contribute to the bachelorette party, which she wanted in Miami for 4 days. I did the math. Between the dress, travel, accommodations, meals, and all the events, I was looking at close to $3,000 for someone else's wedding, where I wasn't even that close to the bride. I tried to bring it up gently. "Hey Emma, this is a pretty big financial commitment. Is there any flexibility on some of these costs?" She stared at me like I just insulted her entire bloodline. "This is my wedding. It's 1 day. Can't you make the sacrifice for me?" I wanted to point out that it wasn't 1 day. It was 6 months of events and obligations. But I bit my tongue. A few of the other bridesmaids nodded along with Emma, clearly already committed to whatever she demanded. The vision boarding brunch was exactly as insufferable as it sounds. We sat in Emma's living room, cutting out magazine pictures of flowers, dresses, and exotic locations while she explained her aesthetic journey. She decided the wedding theme was ethereal garden romance, which apparently meant a lot of white, gold, and pale pink. Then came the bachelorette party planning. Emma wanted 4 days in Miami, staying at a beachfront resort, with reservations at expensive restaurants every night. She sent us a proposed budget, $1,800 per person. I nearly choked on my coffee. Another bridesmaid, Lauren, finally spoke up. "Emma, that's a lot. Can we maybe do something local? A nice dinner and a spa day?" Emma's face went cold. "I've dreamed about this my entire life. My bachelorette party is in Miami. If you can't afford it, maybe you shouldn't have agreed to be in the wedding." The guilt tripping was masterful. I'll give her that. 3 of us, myself, Jess, and Lauren, met for coffee later that week to discuss our concerns. We were all stressed about the money. Jess was saving for a down payment on a house. Lauren had student loans. I was trying to build an emergency fund. None of us had thousands of dollars to throw at someone else's wedding festivities. We decided to approach Emma together, presenting alternatives. Maybe a weekend trip somewhere closer. Maybe we could do our own hair and makeup. Maybe a simpler dress. Emma shut us down immediately. "If you 3 can't handle being bridesmaids, I'll replace you. I have other friends who would be honored to stand by my side." It felt like a threat, and honestly, it kind of was. Jess dropped out first. She sent Emma a polite message explaining that the financial burden was too much, and she hoped they could still celebrate together in other ways. Emma didn't respond. Instead, she posted on social media about fake friends who abandon you when you need them most. That's when I knew I needed to get out too. I called Emma and explained that I couldn't afford the expenses. I was apologetic, offered to help in other ways, said I'd still love to attend as a guest. She didn't yell, she didn't argue. She just said, "I guess I know where I stand with you," and hung up. 2 days later, my invitation to the wedding, even as a guest, was revoked. Emma sent a group text to the family saying that due to venue capacity constraints, she'd had to trim the guest list, and unfortunately, some cousins wouldn't be able to attend. My mom called me, confused. "Did something happen between you and Emma?" I explained the situation. My mom was sympathetic, but also tried to smooth things over. "You know how brides get. It's a stressful time. Maybe just apologize and see if she'll let you come." I wasn't going to apologize for not being able to afford $3,000. The wedding happened without me. From what I heard through the family grapevine, it was beautiful, elegant, expensive. Emma posted about 100 photos on social media, all perfectly curated, all showing her dream day coming to life. But here's the kicker. About 3 months after the wedding, I ran into Lauren at a grocery store. She'd also been cut from the bridal party after our confrontation and had watched the whole thing unfold from the outside. She told me that 2 of the bridesmaids who'd stayed had complained afterward about how miserable the experience was. The Miami bachelorette party had been tense because Emma criticized every restaurant choice, every activity, every moment that didn't match her vision. On the wedding day, she'd had a meltdown because one bridesmaid's lipstick was half a shade too dark. And the real kicker? Emma and Derek separated 8 months after the wedding. Apparently, all that focus on the perfect day hadn't translated into a strong marriage. I felt vindicated, honestly. Not because the marriage failed. I wouldn't wish that on anyone, but because it confirmed what I'd suspected all along. Emma had been more in love with the idea of a wedding than with building a life with someone. My mom eventually apologized for pressuring me to make amends. She admitted Emma had gone overboard and that I'd made the right choice by stepping back. I never got an apology from Emma, though. And honestly, I'm fine with that. Some people can't see past their own expectations, and that's their burden to carry, not mine. Looking back, the only thing I regret is not dropping out sooner. Let's move on to the next story. I worked at a mid-sized insurance company for about 3 years. The job was fine, not exciting, but stable. I processed claims, answered emails, handled customer inquiries. Pretty standard office work. I'd always been good at finding shortcuts, not cutting corners, but streamlining processes. If I could automate something or find a faster way to do a task without sacrificing quality, I did it. It made my days easier and helped me stay on top of my workload. About 6 months before this story takes place, I'd figured out how to use some basic Excel macros to automate parts of the claims processing system. Nothing fancy, just stuff that eliminated repetitive data entry. What used to take me 45 minutes per claim now took about 15. My productivity went through the roof. I was finishing my daily workload by lunchtime and spending the afternoon either helping coworkers or getting ahead on the next day's tasks. My manager, Carol, noticed. At first, she seemed pleased. She mentioned in a team meeting that I was setting a great example and that my efficiency was impressive. I thought maybe I'd get a raise or a bonus. I'd been there 3 years, consistently performed well, and now I was outpacing everyone. Instead, Carol called me into her office one afternoon with a written warning. I sat down, confused, as she slid a piece of paper across the desk. The document outlined several performance concerns, including completing work too quickly, raising questions about thoroughness, creating an uncomfortable competitive environment for other team members, not adhering to established time guidelines for claim processing. I read it twice, convinced I was missing something. "I don't understand," I said. "You're writing me up for working too fast." Carol folded her hands on the desk, her expression serious. "We have standards for a reason. Each claim is supposed to take 45 minutes to an hour. You're finishing them in 15. That suggests you're not being thorough." "But I am being thorough," I said. "I automated the data entry parts. The actual review process is the same. I'm just not wasting time typing things manually. That's another issue, Carol said. You're using unauthorized tools. Company policy states that any automation or software modifications need to be approved by IT. They're Excel macros. Excel is company-approved software. I didn't install anything new. She didn't budge. You changed the workflow without approval. That's a violation. I stared at her, trying to process this. So you want me to go back to doing things the slow way, even though the fast way produces the same results? I want you to follow the established processes, Carol said, and I need you to slow down. You're making the rest of the team look bad. That last part was the kicker. This wasn't about thoroughness or policy. This was about other people complaining that I was making them look inefficient by comparison. I didn't sign the write-up. I told Carol I needed time to review it and speak with HR. HR was about as helpful as you'd expect. The representative listened to my explanation, nodded sympathetically, and then said, "While we appreciate your initiative, it's important to maintain consistency across the team. If you found ways to improve efficiency, the proper channel is to propose those changes through your manager, who can then implement them department-wide." I did tell Carol about the macros, I said. She told me they were great. Now she's writing me up for using them. The HR rep gave me a corporate smile. I'll speak with Carol to clarify the situation. In the meantime, I'd advise following the standard procedures until we can review your process improvements formally. Translation: slow down and stop making waves. I left that meeting furious. I'd been punished for being good at my job, for finding ways to work smarter, for doing exactly what every corporate motivational poster tells you to do. So I did what they asked. I slowed down. I disabled my macros. I went back to manual data entry. I dragged out every claim to take the full 45 minutes, even when I could have finished in 20. I stopped helping coworkers during my downtime. I stopped getting ahead on tasks. My productivity dropped to exactly average. Carol seemed satisfied. No more write-ups, no more concerns. I was now a model employee, apparently, because I was doing the bare minimum at the same pace as everyone else. But I wasn't done. I started documenting everything. Every inefficiency in our processes, every bottleneck, every outdated policy that wasted time. I kept a detailed log of how much time each task actually required versus how much time we were expected to spend on it. After 2 months, I had a comprehensive report. I didn't give it to Carol. I went over her head. Our department had a director, Susan, who oversaw multiple teams. She had a reputation for being data-driven and results-oriented. I requested a meeting with her, and to my surprise, she agreed. I walked into Susan's office with my report and laid it all out. I explained the macros, the efficiency gains, the write-up, and the current situation where I was being paid to work slower than I was capable of. Susan listened without interrupting. When I finished, she asked if she could keep the report. "Absolutely," I said. 2 weeks later, Carol was removed as manager of our team. She wasn't fired, but she was transferred to a different department in what was very clearly a demotion. Susan brought in a new manager, Kevin, who immediately implemented several of my process improvements across the entire team. My macros became standard tools. Other inefficiencies I documented were addressed. Within a month, the whole department's productivity had increased by 30%. Kevin pulled me aside one day and said, "I read your report. Carol should have recognized what you were bringing to the table. That kind of initiative is exactly what we need." I got a raise 3 months later. Not a huge one, but enough to feel like the company actually valued what I contributed. Carol never spoke to me again. We'd pass each other in the hallway occasionally, and she'd look right through me like I didn't exist. I stayed at that company for another year before moving on to a better opportunity. But that experience taught me something important. Not every manager wants you to succeed. Some people are more interested in maintaining the status quo than in actual improvement. And if you're going to challenge the status quo, you better have the documentation to back it up. All right, let's get into the next one. When I got pregnant with my first child, I was excited. nervous, but excited. My husband, Tom, and I had been together for 5 years, married for 2, and we'd been planning this for a while. Tom's mother, Linda, had always been a lot. She wasn't overtly hostile, but she had strong opinions about everything and wasn't shy about sharing them. How we decorated our house, what cars we should drive, where we should go on vacation. She always framed it as helpful advice, but it felt more like criticism. When we announced the pregnancy, Linda immediately started making plans. She wanted to host the baby shower. She wanted to pick the theme. She wanted to create the guest list. I politely told her that my mom and my sister were already planning the shower, but she was absolutely welcome to attend and help out if she wanted. Linda did not take this well. "I'm the grandmother," she said. "I should be hosting this." Tom tried to smooth things over. "Mom, it's tradition for the mother of the bride's side to host. You'll be involved, don't worry." She pursed her lips and didn't say anything else, but I could tell she was unhappy. My mom and sister planned a beautiful shower. We decided on a woodland theme, lots of greenery, soft browns and creams, subtle and elegant. The guest list was about 40 people. My friends, Tom's friends, family from both sides, co-workers, standard stuff. Linda asked multiple times if she could help with planning. Each time, my mom kindly gave her small tasks, helping coordinate RSVPs, suggesting local bakeries for the cake. But Linda seemed to want control over the whole event, not just pieces of it. 2 weeks before the shower, Linda called me. "I've been thinking about the theme. Woodland is a bit dull, don't you think? I found this amazing nautical theme package online. Navy and white, anchors, little sailboats, much more vibrant." "We've already ordered decorations for the woodland theme," I said. "Everything's set." "Well, you could cancel it," Linda suggested. "I'd be happy to order the nautical theme myself. My treat." "Linda, I appreciate it, but we're sticking with what we planned." There was a long pause. "Fine. It's your shower." The way she said "your shower" made it clear she thought I was making a mistake. The week before the shower, my sister called me in a panic. "The venue just called. They said someone contacted them claiming to be you and tried to change the booking." "What?" "Yeah, they said someone called pretending to be you and wanted to change the date and time. The venue got suspicious and called me to confirm." My stomach dropped. "Did they say who called?" "They said it was an older woman who claimed to be the mother of the bride." "Linda." I immediately called the venue and confirmed that no changes were authorized. They flagged the account to only accept changes from me or my sister directly. Then I called Tom. "Your mother tried to sabotage the shower," I said, not bothering to ease into it. Tom sighed. "Are you sure it was her?" "Who else would it be? She's been trying to take over since day one." He promised to talk to her. That evening, he called his mom, and from what he told me later, she denied everything. She claimed it must have been a misunderstanding, maybe someone with a similar name. I didn't believe her for a second, but there was no way to prove it. The day of the shower arrived. Everything looked perfect. The venue was decorated beautifully, the food was set up, the cake had arrived on time. My mom, my sister, and I were feeling good. Linda showed up an hour early. She walked in with 2 large shopping bags and immediately started pulling out decorations, nautical decorations, navy tablecloths, anchor centerpieces, sailboat confetti. "Surprise," she said brightly. "I thought I'd add a little extra flair." My sister stepped in before I could say anything. "Linda, we already have decorations. Everything's set up." Linda waved her hand dismissively. "This will just enhance it. Trust me, it'll look wonderful." "No," I said firmly. "We're not using those." Linda's smile faltered. "I spent $200 on these." "I didn't ask you to do that. I told you we had the theme handled." "You're being ungrateful," Linda said, her voice rising. "I'm trying to help make this special for you, and you're rejecting it." Tom, who had just arrived, stepped between us. "Mom, she said no. Please respect that." Linda's face turned red. Fine, I'll just take these home. Clearly my contributions aren't wanted. She shoved the decorations back into the bags and stormed out to her car. I thought maybe she'd cool off and come back. Instead, she drove away. Tom called her. She didn't answer. The shower went on without her. It was lovely. Friends and family came. We played games, opened gifts, ate way too much cake. Everyone had a great time. But Linda's absence hung over everything. People kept asking where she was. I had to make up excuses. She wasn't feeling well. She'd had a conflict come up. I didn't want to admit that my mother-in-law had thrown a tantrum and left. After the shower, Tom tried calling her again. This time she answered. "I'm not coming back," she said. "Clearly I'm not valued. You've made it clear whose family matters more." Tom was furious. "Mom, you tried to change the venue booking without permission. You showed up with decorations after being told not to. This isn't about whose family matters. It's about respecting boundaries." Linda hung up on him. She didn't speak to us for 3 months. Not a text, not a call. When our daughter was born, Tom called to let her know. She congratulated him politely and asked for pictures, but didn't visit the hospital. It took another 2 months before she finally reached out. She sent a card with a gift card inside and a note that said, "I hope we can move forward." No apology, no acknowledgement of what she'd done. Tom wanted to just let it go, to accept the olive branch and move on. I wasn't ready. I told him I needed an actual apology before I could feel comfortable having her around our daughter. He talked to his mom. She insisted she'd done nothing wrong, that I'd been the one who was rude and dismissive of her efforts. We ended up in family therapy. Yes, really. A therapist helped mediate the conversation. It took 4 sessions, but Linda finally admitted that she'd overstepped. She apologized, stiffly, reluctantly, but she did it. Our relationship now is cordial, but distant. She sees her granddaughter regularly, but I keep her at arm's length. I'm polite, I include her in family events, but I don't confide in her or trust her the way I did before. Some people can't handle not being the center of attention, and when they realize they're not, they'll do whatever it takes to make it about them, even if it means ruining someone else's special moment. I'm just glad I didn't let her ruin mine. Let's dive into the next story. I live in an apartment complex with assigned parking. Each unit gets 1 spot, clearly marked with the unit number. It's painted on the curb. It's in the lease. It's non-negotiable. For 2 years, this system worked fine. Then new neighbors moved into the unit next to mine. The first week, I came home from work to find a silver SUV in my spot, my assigned spot, with my unit number painted on it. I figured it was an honest mistake. New residents, maybe they hadn't figured out the parking situation yet. I parked in a visitor spot and left a polite note on their windshield. "Hi, welcome to the building. This is actually my assigned spot, Unit 12B. Your spot should be 12C, 1 spot over. Thanks." The next day, the SUV was in my spot again. I left another note, a little more direct this time. "Hey, this is my assigned parking spot. Please park in your own spot, 12C. Thank you." Day 3. SUV still in my spot. I knocked on their door. A guy in his 30s answered, looking annoyed that I'd interrupted whatever he was doing. "Hey, I'm your neighbor," I said. "I've left a couple notes about the parking. You've been parking in my spot." He shrugged. "The spots aren't labeled clearly. I parked where there was space." "They are labeled," I said. "There's a number painted on the curb, 12B. That's my unit." "I didn't see it," he said. "Well, now you know. Can you please park in your own spot from now on?" He stared at me for a second, then said, "Sure, whatever," and closed the door. I thought that was the end of it. It wasn't. The next evening, his SUV was in my spot again. At this point, I was annoyed. I called the property management office and explained the situation. They said they'd send a reminder to all residents about parking policies. That did nothing. For the next 2 weeks, this guy parked in my spot at least 4 or 5 times. Every time, I'd have to park in visitor parking and walk farther to my apartment. Visitor parking was limited, and on weekends, It was completely full, meaning I'd sometimes have to park on the street outside the complex. I tried talking to him again. This time, he didn't even pretend to care. Look, man, I get home before you most days. If the spot's empty, I'm taking it. First come, first served. That's not how assigned parking works, I said. Take it up with management if you have a problem. I did. Management sent him a formal warning letter. He ignored it. I was beyond frustrated. I was paying rent that included an assigned parking spot, and this guy was just blatantly stealing it because he could. So I got creative. I worked from home 2 days a week, which meant I could control when my car was in the spot. I started making sure my car was parked there on the days he'd typically get home first. But that didn't solve the nights when I had to work late or run errands. Then I had an idea. I bought a bright orange traffic cone, one of those big, heavy ones. Every morning before I left for work, I'd put the cone in my parking spot. When I came home, I'd move it and park. The first day, it worked perfectly. I came home, my spot was empty with the cone in it, and I parked without issue. The second day, the cone was moved to the side, and his SUV was in my spot. Okay, fine. New plan. I bought 4 more cones. I arranged them around the perimeter of my spot, making it impossible to park there without moving all of them. He moved them. This was war now. I went to a hardware store and bought a foldable parking barrier, one of those metal arms that flips up and down with a lock. I installed it in my spot. When I left, I'd lock it in the upright position. When I came home, I'd unlock it and fold it down. The parking spot thief couldn't do anything about it. The barrier was locked, and he couldn't park there without damaging his car. For about a week, this worked perfectly. Then I came home one day to find the barrier broken. Someone had driven over it, bending the metal and snapping the lock. I checked my building's security camera footage. Yes, we had cameras in the parking lot, and it was him. He'd deliberately driven over the barrier, damaging it just to take my spot. I took the footage to management. They contacted him with a final warning and a bill for the damaged barrier. He paid it, but left me a nasty note saying I was making a big deal out of nothing and that I needed to chill out. At this point, I was done being nice. I installed a new barrier, this time a much sturdier one, anchored into the concrete. I also installed a small security camera aimed directly at my parking spot, recording everything. 2 days later, he tried to drive over the new barrier. His SUV got stuck on top of it, scraping the undercarriage. The camera caught everything. I sent the footage to management and filed a police report for property damage. Management finally evicted him, not immediately. It took another month of back and forth. But eventually, they terminated his lease for repeated violations of parking policy and property damage. He moved out, and I never saw him again. The whole situation was exhausting and ridiculous, all because someone decided the rules didn't apply to them. But hey, at least I got my parking spot back. Let's move to the next story. My mom died when I was 14. Cancer. It was brutal and drawn out, and by the time she passed, I was emotionally exhausted. My dad was devastated. They'd been together since high school. She was his whole world. For the first year after she died, he barely functioned. He went to work, came home, sat on the couch, and stared at the TV without really watching it. I was grieving too, but I also had to pick up a lot of the household responsibilities. Cooking, cleaning, making sure bills got paid. My dad was physically present, but emotionally absent. About 18 months after Mom died, Dad started dating again. I was 16 by then, and honestly, I was relieved. I thought maybe having someone in his life would help him move forward. He met a woman named Cheryl at work. She seemed nice enough. They went on a few dates, and Dad seemed happier, lighter. He smiled more. He started engaging with life again. I was glad for him. Cheryl started coming around the house more often. At first it was casual, dinner once a week, maybe a movie on the weekend. She was friendly to me, asked about school, complimented the meals I cooked. I appreciated the effort. Then things started to change. About 3 months into their relationship, Cheryl started rearranging things in the house. Little things at first, She'd move a picture frame, reorganize the kitchen cabinets, suggest we change the living room furniture layout. My dad didn't seem to notice, or if he did, he didn't care. But I noticed. My mom's presence was everywhere in that house. Photos on the walls, her favorite coffee mug in the cupboard, the throw blanket she'd crocheted draped over the couch. It wasn't a shrine, we weren't frozen in time, but those little pieces of her were important to me. Cheryl started suggesting we update the house. New paint colors, new curtains, new furniture. It's been almost 2 years, she said one evening while we were eating dinner. Maybe it's time for a fresh start, a new chapter. My dad nodded along, not really paying attention. I said, I like the house the way it is. Cheryl smiled at me, that patient smile adults give kids when they think they're being difficult. Change can be good, sweetie. It helps us move forward. I hated being called sweetie. The breaking point came about a month later. I came home from school one day to find Cheryl in the living room, taking down the family photos from the wall, my mom's photos. What are you doing? I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. Just making some space, Cheryl said cheerfully. Your dad and I thought it might be nice to put up some new pictures. Mix in some recent ones. Those are my mom's pictures. I know, hun. We're not throwing them away. We'll box them up, and you can keep them in your room if you want. I don't want them in my room. I want them on the wall where they've always been. Cheryl set down the frame she was holding and turned to face me. I understand this is hard for you, but your dad is trying to move on, and it's difficult for him to do that when he's surrounded by constant reminders of the past. She's not the past. She was my mom. And she'll always be your mom, Cheryl said, her tone annoyingly calm. But she's gone, and your dad deserves to be happy again. I felt my chest tighten. He can be happy without erasing her. Cheryl sighed like I was being unreasonable. No one's erasing anyone. We're just making room for new memories. I went to my room and slammed the door. I was furious, not just at Cheryl, but at my dad for letting this happen. When he got home from work, I confronted him. Did you tell Cheryl she could take down Mom's pictures? He looked confused. What? The pictures in the living room. Cheryl took them down. Oh. He rubbed his face. She mentioned wanting to redecorate a bit. I told her that was fine. It's not fine, I said, my voice shaking. Those pictures have been there since before Mom died. They're not decor. They're our family. I know, kiddo, but Cheryl's right. Maybe it's time to mix things up. It doesn't mean we're forgetting your mom. It feels like you are. He didn't have a good response to that. Over the next few weeks, more things changed. Cheryl replaced Mom's throw blanket with a new one. She bought different curtains for the living room. She rearranged the kitchen cabinets so that Mom's coffee mug got pushed to the back. Every change felt like a small erasure. I tried talking to Dad again, but he was in full moving on mode. He didn't see the problem. To him, Cheryl was helping us create a fresh start. To me, she was trying to replace my mom. The final straw came on what would have been my mom's 45th birthday. Every year since she died, Dad and I had spent that day together. We'd visit her grave, bring flowers, maybe get ice cream at her favorite shop. It was our tradition, our way of honoring her. That year, Cheryl wanted to come along. I think it would be nice for us to go as a family, she said. We're not a family, I snapped. Cheryl's face fell, and Dad gave me a look like I just kicked a puppy. That was rude, he said quietly. I don't care. This is about Mom. It's our day with her. Cheryl doesn't belong there. Dad and Cheryl exchanged a look, and then Dad said, Cheryl's important to me. She's part of my life now. I want her to be part of this. I stared at him, unable to believe what I was hearing. So you're choosing her over Mom? That's not what this is, he said, his voice rising. Your mom is gone. I'm trying to build a life with someone new, and I need you to accept that. I don't have to accept anything, I said, and I walked out. I didn't go to the grave that day. I locked myself in my room and cried until I fell asleep. Dad and Cheryl went without me. When they got back, Cheryl knocked on my door. I ignored her. She knocked again. Can we talk? No. She opened the door anyway. I sat up, glaring at her. I know you don't like me, she said, sitting on the edge of my bed, uninvited. And I understand why. I'm not trying to replace your mom. I could never do that. But I love your dad, and I want to be part of his life. That means being part of yours, too. I don't want you in my life, I said coldly. Cheryl looked hurt, but I didn't care. I'm sorry you feel that way, but I'm not going anywhere. She left, and I stayed in my room for the rest of the day. Things were tense after that. I avoided Cheryl as much as possible. Dad was caught in the middle, trying to keep both of us happy and failing miserably. Eventually, Dad and Cheryl broke up. Not because of me, specifically, but because the constant conflict was too much. They tried to make it work, but the stress wore them down. After Cheryl left, Dad and I had a long talk. He apologized for not listening to me, for prioritizing his need to move on over my need to grieve. We put Mom's pictures back up. We kept her things where they'd always been. And Dad promised that if he ever dated again, he'd make sure I was comfortable with whoever that person was. He never did date again, though. He said he wasn't interested. I think maybe losing Cheryl made him realize that moving on doesn't mean leaving the past behind. It just means making room for both. And that's something I wish he'd understood sooner. All right, next story coming up. I worked for a mid-sized marketing firm for about 4 years. It was a decent job, good people, interesting clients, reasonable pay. I'd worked my way up from a junior account coordinator to a senior project manager, and I was proud of what I'd accomplished. About a year before this story happened, the company hired a new account director named Marcus. He was charismatic, charming, great at schmoozing clients. Upper management loved him. I didn't trust him from the start. There was something about the way he operated, always taking credit for things, always positioning himself front and center. But he was good at his job, or at least he seemed to be. So I tried to give him the benefit of the doubt. Our company landed a huge client, a national retail chain looking to completely overhaul their brand strategy. It was the biggest project we'd had in years, and the whole agency was buzzing about it. I was assigned as the lead project manager. Marcus was the account director overseeing the project, but the actual work, research, strategy development, creative direction, was mine. I spent 3 months on this project. Late nights, weekends, constant revisions. I coordinated with designers, copywriters, data analysts. I built the entire brand strategy from the ground up, pulling together market research, competitive analysis, customer insights, everything. The final presentation deck was 90 slides of comprehensive, thoughtful work. I was proud of it. The presentation was scheduled with the client's executive team, CEO, CMO, VP of marketing, high stakes. Everyone at our agency knew this was a make or break moment. The day before the presentation, Marcus asked if he could review the deck one more time. I sent it to him. The morning of the presentation, we arrived at the client's office. Marcus, myself, our creative director, and our CEO. We set up in the conference room, and when the client's team arrived, Marcus stepped to the front. "Thanks for having us," he said with that signature charm. "We've been working incredibly hard on this, and I'm excited to walk you through what we've developed." I assumed he was just doing the intro and would hand it over to me for the actual presentation. That's how it usually worked. He didn't. Marcus started presenting my slides, my research, my strategy, and he presented it as if he'd done all the work. Every slide, every insight, every recommendation, he talked about it like it was his. I analyzed the market data. I identified these key demographics. I developed this positioning strategy. I sat there, stunned. Our creative director glanced at me, confused. Even our CEO looked a little uncomfortable. The client team was eating it up. Marcus was smooth, confident, engaging. They asked questions, and he answered them, though I noticed he fumbled on a few details and had to defer to me for clarification. The presentation lasted an hour. When it ended, the client's CEO stood up and shook Marcus's hand. "This is exactly what we needed," he said. "You've done incredible work." Marcus smiled. "Thank you. It's been a real passion project for me." A passion project for him. We left the meeting, and Marcus was riding high. In the car back to the office, he was already talking about how well it went, how impressed the client was, how this was going to be huge for the agency. I said nothing. I was too angry to speak. Back at the office, I went straight to my desk and started writing an email to my boss, the managing director. I outlined everything that had happened, the months of work, the presentation, Marcus taking credit. Before I could send it, Marcus stopped by my desk. "Hey, great job in there," he said casually. I stared at him. "You took credit for my work." He laughed, like I'd made a joke. "What?" "No, I presented the work we did as a team." "You said I through the entire presentation. You didn't mention me once." Marcus leaned against my desk, lowering his voice. "Look, that's just how client presentations work. They want to deal with leadership, not project managers. You did great work behind the scenes, but when we're in the room, I'm the face of the project." "That's not what we agreed on," I said. "I was supposed to present." He shrugged. "Plans change. The important thing is the client loved it. We're all going to benefit from this." He walked away before I could respond. I sent the email to my boss. The next day, I was called into her office. She'd read the email, and she wanted to hear more. I explained everything. She listened, took notes, and promised to look into it. A week later, I had a follow-up meeting. My boss told me she'd spoken with Marcus and with our CEO. Marcus had claimed that while I'd done significant project management work, he'd been the one driving the strategic direction. He'd framed it as a collaborative effort where we'd both contributed, but his role had been more senior. It was complete nonsense, but he'd spun it well. My boss said she believed me, but unfortunately, there wasn't much she could do. The client was happy, the project was successful, and Marcus was a valuable asset to the company. Making waves over credit would just create unnecessary drama. I was furious. So he gets to steal my work, and nothing happens. "I'm sorry," she said. "I know it's not fair, but politics is part of the job." I walked out of that meeting knowing I couldn't stay at that company, but I wasn't going to leave quietly. Over the next month, I documented everything I'd worked on. Every project, every strategy, every deliverable. I created a portfolio that clearly showed my contributions. Then I started applying for jobs. I landed an interview at a competing agency, a bigger firm with better clients and better pay. During the interview, they asked about my experience, and I walked them through the retail brand strategy project in detail. I showed them my work, my process, my results. They offered me the job on the spot, a 25% pay increase and a senior strategist title. I accepted. When I gave my 2 weeks' notice at the old firm, my boss was shocked. She tried to convince me to stay, offering a raise and a promotion. "Too late," I said. "You had the chance to back me up, and you chose Marcus instead." On my last day, the CEO asked to meet with me. He said he was sorry to see me go and asked if there was anything they could have done differently. "Yes," I said. "You could have held people accountable instead of rewarding them for taking credit for other people's work." He didn't have a good response to that. I left, and I never looked back. A few months later, I heard through the grapevine that the retail client had fired the agency. Apparently, Marcus had screwed up a follow-up project because he didn't actually understand the strategy he'd presented, because it wasn't his strategy. It was mine. The agency lost a massive account, and Marcus was quietly let go not long after. Meanwhile, I was thriving at my new job, working with clients who actually appreciated and recognized my contributions. Sometimes the best revenge is just being successful somewhere else. Let's jump into the next one. When I moved to a new city for work, I needed to find an apartment fast. I'd accepted a job offer with only 3 weeks to relocate, and I didn't know anyone in the area. I found a decent 2-bedroom place online and posted on a local housing group looking for a roommate. A guy named Tyler responded. He seemed normal enough. Worked in IT, late 20s, no drama. We met for coffee, chatted for an hour, and he seemed responsible. We signed the lease together. The first month was fine. Tyler paid his half of the rent and utilities on time. He kept his space clean. We weren't best friends, but we got along well enough. Month 2, Tyler told me he'd had an unexpected expense, car repairs, and asked if he could pay his rent a week late. I said, sure, no problem. Life happens. He paid it 9 days late, but he paid it. Month 3, he was late again. This time, 2 weeks late. When I asked about it, he said work had messed up his paycheck and he was waiting for it to be corrected. I was annoyed, but tried to be understanding. I'd had paycheck issues at jobs before. It happens. Month 4, he didn't pay at all. When rent was due, I texted him, "Hey, rent's due today. Can you Venmo me your half?" No response. I texted again the next day. Nothing. On day 3, I knocked on his bedroom door. He opened it, looking annoyed. "Did you see my text about rent?" I asked. "Yeah, I'm working on it," he said vaguely. Rent was due 3 days ago. The landlord is going to charge us a late fee. "I know, I'll have it soon." "How soon?" Tyler shrugged. "I don't know, man. I'm having some financial issues right now." "What kind of issues?" "Just stuff. I'll figure it out." He closed the door before I could ask more questions. I ended up paying the full rent myself to avoid the late fee. Tyler promised he'd pay me back. He didn't. Month 5, same story. Tyler didn't pay. I covered it again, draining my savings account. I confronted him, more forcefully this time. "You owe me 2 months of rent now. That's over $2,000. When are you going to pay me?" "I'm dealing with some stuff," Tyler said defensively. "I'll pay you when I can." "That's not good enough. We have a lease. You're legally obligated to pay." "I know. I'm trying." "Trying isn't paying rent." He got angry then. "Look, I'm sorry I'm not perfect like you. Some of us are struggling, okay?" I was floored. He was acting like I was the bad guy for expecting him to hold up his end of the lease. Month 6, I told Tyler I wasn't covering his rent anymore. If he didn't pay, the landlord would have to deal with him directly. Tyler didn't pay. The landlord called me, furious. We were $3,000 behind. He threatened to evict both of us. I explained the situation, that I'd been paying my half plus covering Tyler's for months, but I couldn't keep doing it. The landlord didn't care. The lease was in both our names, which meant we were both liable. If one of us didn't pay, we were both at risk of eviction. I was panicking. I couldn't afford to be evicted. I couldn't afford to keep covering Tyler's rent, and I definitely couldn't afford to break the lease and move somewhere else. I did the only thing I could think of. I contacted a lawyer. The lawyer explained that while Tyler and I were both on the lease, I could potentially sue him for the back rent. It would be a small claims court case, straightforward but time-consuming. I filed the paperwork. Tyler was served with the court summons at the apartment. He was livid. "You're suing me?" he shouted. "Are you serious?" "You owe me 3 months of rent," I said calmly. "You've had months to pay me back, and you haven't. I told you I'm struggling, and I've been more than patient. But I'm not your bank. You signed a lease. You're responsible for your half." Tyler called me every name in the book. He accused me of being heartless, of kicking him while he was down, of prioritizing money over friendship. "We're not friends," I said. "We're roommates with a legal agreement." He moved out 2 weeks later, in the middle of the night, without saying a word. I woke up one morning to find his room empty and his key on the kitchen counter. He left me with 6 months remaining on the lease, still owing me 3 months of back rent, and now responsible for the full rent amount every month. I was furious. Not only had he screwed me financially, but now I was stuck in an apartment. I couldn't afford a loan. The court date came a month later. Tyler didn't show up. The judge ruled in my favor by default and ordered Tyler to pay me the full amount plus court fees. On paper, I'd won. In reality, Tyler had vanished. I had no way to collect the money. The judgment was worthless. I had to break the lease early, paying a penalty fee to the landlord. I moved into a studio apartment I could barely afford and spent the next year rebuilding my savings. I never heard from Tyler again. I checked social media once. He'd moved to a different state and was posting pictures of himself at concerts and bars, clearly not struggling as much as he'd claimed. I learned a hard lesson. When it comes to money and leases, don't assume people will do the right thing. Get everything in writing, set clear expectations, and don't be afraid to enforce consequences. And never, ever cover someone else's rent unless you're okay with never seeing that money again. Let's get into the next story. I was 17 when this happened, just finishing up my junior year of high school. College was looming, and I'd been working toward it my whole life. My parents had set up a college fund for me when I was a baby. Nothing extravagant, but they'd been contributing to it consistently for years. By the time I was a teenager, there was around $45,000 in it, enough to cover a decent chunk of tuition at a state school, maybe all of it if I got scholarships. My sister Megan was 3 years older than me. She'd gone to college right out of high school, but had dropped out after 2 semesters. She'd partied too much, skipped classes, and eventually just stopped going. My parents had been disappointed but tried to be supportive. Megan moved back home and bounced between part-time jobs. She was always talking about going back to school, or starting a business, or pursuing some new passion, but nothing ever materialized. When I was 17, Megan came to my parents with a business idea. She wanted to start an online boutique selling handmade jewelry. She had a whole pitch prepared, market research, profit projections, a list of supplies she'd need. My parents were skeptical, but encouraging. They didn't offer her any money, though. They'd learned their lesson after funding her first year of college. A few weeks later, my mom sat me down for a conversation. "Your sister is really passionate about this jewelry business," she said, "and your dad and I think it could be a great opportunity for her." "That's great," I said, not sure where this was going. "We're thinking about helping her get started. Just a small investment to give her a real shot." "Okay. The thing is, we don't have extra savings right now, but we were thinking we could borrow from your college fund temporarily. Just $10,000. We'd pay it back before you start college." I stared at her. "You want to take money out of my college fund? To give to Megan?" "It's not giving," my mommy said quickly. "It's a loan, an investment, and it would be paid back with interest." "How are you going to pay it back? You just said you don't have extra savings." "Your dad's getting a raise in a few months. We'll put that money directly back into the fund." I didn't like it, but I was 17. What was I supposed to say? "What if the business doesn't work out?" I asked. "Then we'll still pay it back," my mom said. "This doesn't affect you. We promise." Against my better judgment, I said okay. They took $10,000 out of my college fund and gave it to Megan. Megan used the money to buy supplies, set up a website, and launch her boutique. For the first few weeks, she was excited and motivated. She made a few sales, posted constantly on social media, talked about big plans for expanding. Then the momentum died. Sales slowed down. Megan got discouraged. She started talking about how the market was saturated, how it was too hard to compete with bigger brands, how social media algorithms were working against her. Within 3 months, the business was essentially dead. I asked my parents about the $10,000. My dad said they'd start paying it back after his raise came through. The raise came through. They didn't pay it back. "We have some unexpected expenses right now," my mom explained. "The car needs repairs, and we had to replace the water heater. We'll start putting money back into the fund next month." Next month turned into 3 months, then 6 months. By the time I was filling out college applications, the fund still hadn't been repaid. I brought it up again, more insistently this time. "I'm going to need that money. I'm applying for schools right now." "We know," my dad said. "We're working on it." "Working on it how?" "It's been almost a year." "These things take time," he said, getting defensive. "We're doing the best we can. You promised you'd pay it back. And we will. Just be patient." I wasn't patient. I was angry. That was my money, my future, and it had been handed to my sister for a business that failed within months. When I got accepted to my top choice school, I did the financial math. With the remaining $35,000 in the fund, plus loans and a part-time job, I could make it work. Barely. I confronted my parents one last time. The $10,000 isn't coming back, is it? My mom looked guilty. We're trying, but things have been tight. You spent my college money on Megan's failed business, I said flatly. We didn't spend it, my dad said. We invested it. It just didn't pan out. That's the same thing. Look, you'll still be able to go to college. You'll just have to take out a few more loans. Lots of kids do that. I was furious. Lots of kids didn't have parents who raided their college fund for their siblings' whims. I moved out for college and took out loans to cover what the fund couldn't. I worked 2 part-time jobs throughout school to minimize how much I borrowed, but I still graduated with nearly $30,000 in debt. Megan, meanwhile, moved on to other ideas. None of them worked out. She kept living at home, kept bouncing between jobs, kept asking my parents for help, and my parents kept giving it to her. I graduated, got a job, and started paying off my loans. It took me 6 years to pay them off completely. 6 years of tight budgets and financial stress. My parents never paid back the $10,000. When I brought it up once during a family dinner, my mom got upset and said I was holding a grudge. My dad said I needed to let it go. Megan never acknowledged it. She never apologized, never offered to help pay back even a fraction of it. She acted like the whole thing had never happened. My relationship with my family is strained now. I'm polite. I show up for holidays, but I keep them at a distance. I learned that when it came down to it, my parents prioritized Megan's dreams over my stability. And that's not something I can just let go. Next story coming your way. I worked at a mid-sized tech company for about 5 years. It was one of those places that prided itself on being progressive and inclusive. They had all the right buzzwords on their website, and they made a big deal about their commitment to diversity. On paper, it looked great. In reality, it was all for show. I was one of 3 women on a team of 20. The company was about 70% male overall, and the leadership was almost entirely white men in their 40s and 50s. Every year, they'd publish a diversity report talking about their goals and initiatives. They'd host workshops on unconscious bias. They'd bring in speakers for lunch and learns about inclusion, but nothing actually changed. I'd been there for 3 years when they announced a new Diversity and Inclusion Task Force. They sent out a company-wide email asking for volunteers. I signed up, hoping to actually make a difference. The task force was led by Janet, the VP of HR. She was enthusiastic and well-meaning, but she didn't have any real authority to change company policies. Our first meeting was promising. We talked about real issues, pay gaps, hiring practices, promotion rates, retention. We identified concrete problems and brainstormed solutions. I suggested we do a compensation audit to identify any gender or racial pay disparities. Several other members agreed. Janet said she'd bring it up with the executive team. 2 weeks later, she came back to us. The executive team isn't comfortable with a full compensation audit right now. They're concerned about the optics if discrepancies are found. Isn't that the point? I said. If there are discrepancies, we need to fix them. I agree, Janet said carefully, but they want to approach this more gradually. Translation: they didn't want to actually do anything. Over the next 6 months, the task force met monthly. We came up with recommendations. Janet brought them to the executive team. The executive team watered them down or rejected them entirely. We proposed implementing blind resume screening to reduce hiring bias. Rejected. Not feasible with our current systems. We proposed mandatory diversity training for all managers. Rejected. Too expensive and time-consuming. We proposed setting measurable diversity goals for each department. Rejected. Quotas are problematic. Every proposal was met with excuses. Meanwhile, The company kept publishing feel-good content on social media about how committed they were to diversity and inclusion. I was getting fed up. Then something happened that pushed me over the edge. The company hired a new senior director for engineering. His name was Greg. He was friends with one of the executives, and he'd been brought in at a high level without going through the normal interview process. Greg had no management experience. His technical skills were fine, but nothing exceptional. And yet, he was hired at a higher level and higher salary than people who'd been at the company for years. One of my colleagues, Priya, had been with the company for 7 years. She was brilliant, had led multiple successful projects, and had been told repeatedly that she was next in line for a director role. When the position was filled by Greg instead, Priya was devastated. She went to HR to ask why she hadn't been considered. They told her that Greg had a unique skill set that made him the right fit. Priya asked what skills specifically. They couldn't give her a straight answer. She came to me in tears. I've been here 7 years. I've done everything they asked, and they hired someone's friend instead. I was furious. This was exactly the kind of thing the Diversity Task Force was supposed to address. I brought it up at the next meeting. We need to talk about the recent senior director hire. There are serious concerns about how that position was filled. Janet looked uncomfortable. I can't discuss specific personnel decisions. Then what's the point of this task force? I asked. We're supposed to be addressing these issues, and you're telling me we can't even talk about them. There are legal and privacy considerations, Janet said. This isn't about privacy. This is about accountability. The meeting got tense. A few other members agreed with me. Some stayed silent. Nothing came of it. That's when I decided to take matters into my own hands. I started documenting everything. Hiring data, promotion rates, compensation ranges. I pulled publicly available information from Glassdoor and industry salary surveys. I compared our company's practices to industry standards. The data was damning. Women at our company were promoted at half the rate of men. Employees of color were even worse off. And the pay gaps were significant. Women and minorities were consistently paid 10 to 15% less than their white male counterparts in equivalent roles. I compiled everything into a report, 20 pages of data, UAE charts, and analysis. Then I sent it anonymously to the entire company. The email went out on a Friday afternoon. By Monday morning, the whole company was talking about it. The executive team went into damage control mode. They sent out a statement saying the report contained inaccuracies and that they were committed to investigating the claims. They launched an internal investigation to figure out who'd sent the email. They never found out it was me. I'd used a VPN and a burner email account, but the damage was done. Employees were asking questions. The local tech news picked up the story. The company's reputation took a hit. Within 2 months, the executive team announced several new initiatives. A full compensation audit, with adjustments made where disparities were found. Blind resume screening for all new hires. Mandatory unconscious bias. Training for all managers. Measurable diversity goals for each department. Quarterly diversity reports shared with all employees. Everything we'd proposed months earlier. Everything they'd rejected. It took public embarrassment for them to act. I stayed at the company for another year. Things did improve, slowly, but they improved. More women and people of color were hired. Some pay gaps were corrected. There was actual accountability. Eventually, I moved on to a different company, but I was glad I'd forced the issue, even if I had to do it anonymously. Sometimes the only way to create change is to make people uncomfortable. Let's move to the next story. I met Sarah in college. We were roommates freshman year, randomly assigned, and we just clicked. By sophomore year, we were inseparable. We had the same sense of humor, liked the same music, could talk for hours about nothing and everything. She was my person, you know? The friend you call when something good happens. The friend who knows all your secrets. I met Jake junior year. He was in one of my classes, and we started talking after a group project. He was funny, smart, easy to talk to. We started dating about a month later. Sarah loved Jake. She'd always tell me how lucky I was, how great we were together. The three of us hung out all the time. Movie nights, dinners, weekend trips. It felt easy and comfortable. Jake and I dated for about a year and a half. Things were good, not perfect. We had our issues like any couple, but good. We talked about moving in together after graduation, maybe getting a dog. Then everything fell apart. It was spring break of senior year. I'd gone home to visit my family for the week. Jake had stayed on campus. He was working on his thesis and couldn't take time off. Sarah had also stayed, working a part-time job. I came back to campus on Sunday night. I texted Jake to let him know I was back, but he didn't respond. I figured he was busy or asleep. The next morning, I went to his apartment. We'd planned to have breakfast together and catch up on the week. I knocked. No answer. I had a key, so I let myself in. The apartment was quiet. I called out for Jake. Nothing. Then I heard a noise from the bedroom. A laugh. A female laugh. My stomach dropped. I opened the bedroom door. Jake was in bed, with Sarah. They both froze when they saw me. Sarah pulled the blanket up to cover herself. Jake sat up, his face going pale. "Oh my God," Sarah said. I couldn't speak. I just stood there, staring at them, trying to process what I was seeing. "This isn't," Jake started. "Don't," I said, my voice shaking. "Don't say anything." I turned and walked out. I heard Jake calling after me, but I didn't stop. I got in my car and drove back to my apartment, my hands trembling on the steering wheel. Sarah called me about 10 times. Jake called me 20. I didn't answer. I locked myself in my room and cried until I couldn't cry anymore. Sarah showed up at my apartment that night. She knocked on my door, begging me to let her in. "Please let me explain," she said through the door. "There's nothing to explain," I said. "You slept with my boyfriend. It was a mistake. We were drunk. It didn't mean anything. You're my best friend. I know. I'm so sorry. Please just let me in so we can talk." I opened the door. Sarah's eyes were red, mascara smudged down her cheeks. She looked as wrecked as I felt. "Talk," I said. She took a shaky breath. "It just happened. We were hanging out, we had some drinks, and things just happened. I don't even know how. I feel terrible. How long has this been going on?" "It wasn't going on. It was one time. Last night, I swear." "Do you have feelings for him?" Sarah hesitated. That hesitation told me everything. "Oh my God," I said. "You do?" "I don't know," Sarah said, tears streaming down her face. "I'm confused. I never meant for this to happen. I never wanted to hurt you. But you did. I know. I'm so sorry." I felt numb, betrayed by the two people I trusted most. "You need to leave." "Please don't do this," Sarah said. Our friendship is over," I said. "Get out." She left, sobbing. Jake showed up an hour later. I almost didn't let him in, but part of me needed to hear what he had to say. "I'm sorry," he said immediately. "I'm so sorry. I don't know what I was thinking. It was stupid and selfish, and I hate myself for hurting you." "Why?" I asked. "Why would you do this?" "I don't know. We were hanging out, we'd been drinking, and Sarah said something about how she'd always wondered what it would be like if we'd met first instead of you meeting me, and I don't know. It was like this moment where I wondered too, and then we were kissing, and then, stop," I said. "I don't want the details." Jake ran his hands through his hair. "I love you. This doesn't change that. It was a mistake." "A mistake?" I laughed bitterly. "A mistake is forgetting to text me back. This is a choice. You chose to betray me. I know, and I'll do anything to make it right. Anything. There's nothing to make right. We're done. Please don't say that. We can work through this." "No, we can't. Get out." He tried to argue, but I was done listening. I told him to leave, and eventually, he did. The next few weeks were hell. Jake kept trying to contact me. Texts, calls, showing up at my apartment. Sarah did the same. I blocked both of them. The worst part was that we were all in the same friend group. Everyone knew what had happened. People took sides. Some friends stayed neutral. Some distanced themselves from Sarah and Jake. Some acted like nothing was wrong. I felt isolated. I lost my boyfriend and my best friend in one night, and now I was navigating a social circle that felt like a minefield. Graduation was 6 weeks away. I just had to make it through 6 more weeks, and then I could leave and start fresh somewhere else. I heard through mutual friends that Sarah and Jake had started dating. Officially. About 3 weeks after everything happened. That hurt more than I expected. It confirmed what I'd suspected. It wasn't just a drunken mistake. There were real feelings there. I ran into them once, at a party I didn't know they'd be at. They were standing together, his arm around her waist. When Sarah saw me, she looked guilty. Jake looked away. I left immediately. Graduation came and went. I moved to a different city for a job. I cut ties with most of our mutual friends. I needed a clean break. It took me a long time to trust people again. Every time I met someone new, friend or romantic partner, there was this voice in the back of my head asking if they'd betray me too. Therapy helped. Time helped. I'm in a better place now. I have new friends, a new relationship, a life that doesn't include Sarah or Jake, but I still think about it sometimes. Not because I miss them, but because I'm still angry. Angry that they chose their own desires over my feelings. Angry that I lost 2 important people in one night. Angry that they got to be happy together while I had to rebuild everything. I hope they're happy. I really do. Not because I'm generous or forgiving, but because if they're not, then all that pain was for nothing, and that would be even worse. Let's dive into the next story. I was 32 when I found out I had a brother, an older brother, who'd been alive my entire life, who my entire family had known about, and no one had told me. Here's how I found out. I was doing one of those DNA ancestry tests. You know the ones? You spit in a tube, mail it off, and a few weeks later you get results about your ethnic background and maybe some distant cousins. I'd always been interested in genealogy. My mom's side of the family had some vague stories about European ancestry, and I wanted to know more. The test results came back. The ethnic breakdown was interesting, but not surprising. What was surprising was the list of DNA matches. The closest match, labeled as a first-degree relative, was someone named Daniel. The profile said we shared about 50% of our DNA, which meant we were either parent-child or full siblings. I stared at the screen, confused. I was an only child. My parents had told me my whole life that I was their only child. I clicked on Daniel's profile. He was 35 years old. No photo, minimal information. I messaged him through the platform. Hi, this is probably weird, but we came up as a DNA match. Do you know how we might be related? He responded within an hour. Hi. Yes, this is a bit awkward. I'm your half-brother, same dad. I read the message 3 times. Half-brother, same dad. My dad had another son. I called my parents immediately. My mom answered. Did Dad have another kid? I asked, no preamble. There was a long silence. Then, where's this coming from? I did a DNA test. I matched with someone named Daniel, who says he's my half-brother. Another silence. Then quietly, let me get your father. My dad got on the phone. We need to talk about this in person. No, I said. We need to talk about it now. Do I have a brother? He sighed. Yes, you do. I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. How? Why didn't you tell me? It's complicated. Complicated? Dad, I'm 32 years old. You've had 32 years to tell me. Come over, he said. We'll explain everything. I drove to their house, my mind racing the entire time. When I got there, both my parents were sitting in the living room, looking like they were facing a firing squad. Talk, I said. My dad took a deep breath. Before I met your mother, I was in a relationship with a woman named Linda. We were together for about 2 years. She got pregnant. I wanted to stay together and raise the baby, but Linda didn't want that. She wanted to break up. I tried to be involved, but she made it very difficult. Eventually, she moved away with Daniel, and I lost contact. How old was Daniel when she moved? 3. And you never tried to find him? To stay in his life? I did try, my dad said defensively. Linda wouldn't return my calls. She changed her number. I hired a lawyer, but back then, it was different. Fathers didn't have the same rights they do now. Eventually, I had to accept that she didn't want me in his life. Okay, I said slowly. But why didn't you ever tell me? My mom spoke up then. We didn't think it was relevant. You were our daughter. Daniel was part of your father's past, not your present. Not relevant. He's my brother. Half-brother, my mom corrected. That doesn't make it less important. We wanted to protect you, my dad said. We didn't want you to feel like you were missing something or like our family wasn't complete. Our family wasn't complete, I said. I had a brother out there, and you kept that from me. We were going to tell you eventually, my mom said, when you were older. I'm 32. How much older? They didn't have a good answer. I left their house feeling betrayed and confused. My entire understanding of my family had been a lie. I messaged Daniel back. I just talked to our dad. I had no idea you existed until today. I'm sorry. He responded quickly. Not your fault. I knew about you, though. My mom told me when I was a teenager. You knew about me? Yeah. She told me that my dad had another family and that he'd chosen you over me. I felt sick. That's not what happened. I know that now, but that's what she told me when I was a kid. We decided to meet in person. He lived a few hours away, so we agreed to meet halfway at a coffee shop. When I walked in and saw him, the resemblance was undeniable. He had our dad's eyes, the same nose I had. We looked like siblings. We talked for 3 hours. He told me about his life, how his mom had raised him alone, how she'd always been bitter about my dad, how he'd grown up feeling like he'd been abandoned. I told him about my life, how I'd grown up thinking I was an only child, how I'd had a good relationship with our dad, how I felt guilty now knowing what Daniel had been through. It's not your fault, Daniel said. You didn't know. I should have known. Someone should have told me. Yeah, but they didn't. We stayed in touch after that. We started texting regularly, then talking on the phone. We discovered we had a lot in common. Similar sense of humor, similar interests. It was strange and wonderful and sad all at once. My parents were not thrilled. They invited Daniel to dinner once, awkwardly, and it was tense and uncomfortable. My dad tried to apologize, but it felt hollow. Too little, too late. Daniel didn't want a relationship with our dad. He'd spent 35 years without him, and he wasn't interested in making up for lost time. But he did want a relationship with me, and I wanted one with him. It's been 3 years now. Daniel and I are close. We visit each other a few times a year, text almost every day. He's met my friends. I've met his family. He's genuinely one of my favorite people. My relationship with my parents is strained. I'm still angry at them for lying to me for so long. They've apologized, but it doesn't change the fact that they robbed me of knowing my brother for 32 years. I think about all the time we lost, all the milestones we didn't share, the childhood memories we could have had, and I'm angry that a DNA test, a random, recreational DNA test, was what finally brought the truth to light. Some secrets are kept to protect people, but some secrets are kept to protect the people who are keeping them, and that's a distinction my parents still don't seem to understand. All right, next story. I moved into a new apartment about 2 years ago. Nice building, quiet neighborhood, reasonable rent. It seemed perfect. My neighbor across the hall, Mrs. Patterson, introduced herself the day I moved in. She was probably in her late 60s, retired, lived alone. She seemed friendly enough, offered to help if I needed anything. The first month was fine. We'd exchange pleasantries in the hallway. She'd comment on the weather, normal neighbor stuff. Then the complaints started. I came home from work one day to find a note taped to my door. Please keep the noise down late at night. Some of us are trying to sleep. I was confused. I worked 9 to 5, came home around 6, made dinner, watched TV at a reasonable volume, and was usually in bed by 11. I wasn't having parties or blasting music. I knocked on Mrs. Patterson's door. She answered, looking annoyed. "Hi, I got your note," I said. "I'm sorry if I've been too loud. What specifically was bothering you?" "Last night, you were stomping around until past midnight," she said. "I was in bed by 10:30 last night. Are you sure it was me?" She frowned. "It was definitely you. I can hear everything through these walls." "I'm really sorry, but I don't think it was me. Maybe it was someone else in the building." "No, it was you." I didn't know what else to say. I apologized again and went back to my apartment. A week later, another note. "Your music was too loud this afternoon. Please be considerate." I hadn't played music that afternoon. I'd been at work. I knocked on her door again. "Mrs. Patterson, I got another note, but I wasn't home this afternoon. I was at work until 6. Well, someone in your apartment was making noise. I live alone, and I wasn't here." She looked skeptical. "Are you sure?" "Yes, I'm sure. I was at work. I can show you my time card if you want." She huffed. "Well, I heard noise coming from your apartment. Maybe it was the apartment below me or above me. Sound can travel weird in buildings." "I know where sound comes from," she said curtly. "It was your apartment." She closed the door before I could respond. The complaints kept coming. At least once a week, there was a note on my door, or a knock from Mrs. Patterson accusing me of being too loud. Watching TV at 7 p.m. on a Saturday? Too loud. Taking a shower at 8 a.m. before work? Too loud. Walking around my apartment on a weekday afternoon? Too loud. None of it made sense. I wasn't doing anything that could reasonably be considered disruptive. I started documenting everything. I kept a log of when I was home, what I was doing, and what times Mrs. Patterson complained. I wanted proof that her complaints were baseless. Then she escalated. I got a call from my landlord. "We've received multiple noise complaints about your unit. We need to talk about this." "The complaints are coming from Mrs. Patterson," I said. "And they're not legitimate. I'm not making excessive noise. She's filed 5 complaints in the last month. That's concerning." "I understand, but the complaints aren't accurate. I work normal hours. I don't have parties. I don't play loud music. I've been keeping a log of my activities, and I can show you that nothing I'm doing violates the lease." The landlord sighed. "Look, I'm required to follow up on all complaints. Can you just try to be more mindful of noise levels?" "I'm already being mindful. I'm barely making any noise at all. Just do your best." I was frustrated. Mrs. Patterson was making false complaints, and I was the one being reprimanded. The breaking point came a month later. I was out of town for a week, visiting family. My apartment was completely empty. When I got back, there were 3 notes on my door from Mrs. Patterson, all complaining about noise. I knocked on her door, furious. "I was out of town for a week. My apartment was empty. There's no way you heard noise from my unit." Mrs. Patterson looked flustered. "Well, I heard something." "From where?" "I wasn't here. No one was here." "Maybe you left a TV on or something." "I didn't. The apartment was completely empty." She crossed her arms. "I know what I heard." "You're making things up," I said, my patience gone. "You've been filing false complaints for months. How dare you accuse me of lying?" "Because you're lying. I have proof that I wasn't even in the building last week, and you still complained." She slammed the door in my face. I went straight to the landlord with my documentation, the log of my activities, timestamps showing when I was at work, and proof that I'd been out of town when the most recent complaints were filed. The landlord reviewed everything and agreed that the complaints were unfounded. They spoke with Mrs. Patterson, warning her that filing false complaints could result in consequences for her, not me. The complaints stopped after that. Mrs. Patterson stopped talking to me entirely. We'd pass each other in the hallway, and she'd glare at me like I was the problem. I never found out why she targeted me. Maybe she was lonely and wanted attention. Maybe she just didn't like me. Maybe she had some grudge I didn't know about. Whatever the reason, it was exhausting. I ended up moving out a year later, not because of her, but because I found a better apartment. but the whole experience taught me that sometimes, no matter how reasonable you are, some people will find a reason to make your life difficult, and there's not always a logical explanation for it. Let's get into the next story. My husband Tom and I had been married for 8 years. We had a pretty solid relationship, or so I thought. We had our ups and downs like any couple, but overall, things were good. Tom worked in sales, which meant he traveled a lot. He'd be gone for a few days at a time, attending conferences, or meeting with clients. I was used to it. It was just part of his job. About a year ago, Tom got really into fitness. He joined a gym, started meal prepping, bought all these workout supplements. I was supportive. I figured he was just trying to get healthier. Then he started being really protective of his phone. He'd take it with him everywhere, even to the bathroom. If I walked into a room while he was texting, he'd quickly close his phone or angle it away from me. I didn't think too much of it at first, but then other little things started adding up. He started dressing nicer, new clothes, new cologne. He said it was for work, that he wanted to make a better impression on clients. He started coming home later from work, saying he had to hit the gym or run errands. He became distant, less affectionate, less interested in spending time together. I asked him if everything was okay. He said he was just stressed about work. I wanted to believe him, but something felt off. Then came the moment that changed everything. Tom had been on a business trip for 3 days. He was supposed to come home on Friday evening. I decided to surprise him by making his favorite dinner and setting up a nice evening at home. He texted me around noon. "Flight delayed. Probably won't be home until late. Don't wait up." I was disappointed but understood. Travel delays happen. I was cleaning up the kitchen around 7 p.m. when my phone buzzed. It was a notification from our shared credit card, the one we used for joint expenses. The charge was from a restaurant, a nice restaurant, in our city. I stared at the notification, confused. Tom was supposed to be on a delayed flight. Why was there a charge from a local restaurant? I checked the card activity. The charge had been made 20 minutes ago. I called Tom. He didn't answer. I texted, "Hey, saw a charge from Marcello's on our card. Did you make it home early?" No response. My stomach was churning. Something was very wrong. I got in my car and drove to the restaurant. It was about 15 minutes from our house. The whole drive, I kept telling myself there was a reasonable explanation. Maybe he'd gotten an earlier flight and wanted to surprise me. Maybe he'd lent the card to a friend. I knew I was grasping at straws. I walked into the restaurant and scanned the dining room. It was dimly lit, intimate. Couples sat at small tables, candles flickering between them. And there, in a corner booth, was Tom, with a woman. They were sitting close, leaning toward each other, laughing. His hand was on hers. I stood there, frozen, watching my husband have a romantic dinner with someone who wasn't me. The woman was younger, probably in her late 20s. Pretty. She was wearing a dress that looked expensive. I walked over to their table. Tom saw me first. His face went from relaxed to panicked in about half a second. "What are you doing here?" he stammered. "I could ask you the same thing," I said, my voice surprisingly calm. "I thought your flight was delayed." The woman looked between us, confused. "Who's this?" "I'm his wife," I said. Her eyes went wide. "His what?" "His wife. We've been married for 8 years. She turned to Tom. "You told me you were divorced." "You told her you were divorced?" I said, my voice rising now. "Are you kidding me?" Tom stood up, knocking his water glass over in the process. "This isn't what it looks like. It looks like you're having dinner with another woman while you're supposed to be on a business trip." "I can explain." "No," I said. "You can't." I turned to the woman. "I'm sorry you got dragged into this. He lied to both of us." She looked like she was about to cry. "I had no idea. I swear, I didn't know he was married." "I believe you," I said. Then I turned back to Tom. "Don't bother coming home tonight. I'll pack your things." I walked out of the restaurant, my hands shaking. I got in my car and drove home. running on autopilot. Tom called me about 50 times that night. I didn't answer. He sent texts, long, rambling texts, trying to explain himself, apologizing, begging me to let him explain. I blocked his number. The next morning, I packed up his clothes and personal items and left them in the garage. I changed the locks. When he showed up at the house, I spoke to him through the door. "Your stuff is in the garage. Take it and leave." "Please, can we just talk?" he pleaded. "There's nothing to talk about. It was a mistake. I'll end it. I'll do whatever it takes to fix this." "You can't fix this, Tom. You lied to me for months. You lied to her. You're not the person I thought you were. I love you. I made a stupid mistake, but I love you. If you loved me, you wouldn't have done this." I didn't open the door. Eventually, he took his things and left. I found out later, through mutual friends, that he'd been seeing this woman for about 6 months. They'd met at his gym. The business trips weren't always real. Sometimes he'd stay local and spend the time with her instead. The woman, to her credit, broke things off with him immediately after finding out he was married. She even reached out to me to apologize, which I appreciated. The divorce was finalized 6 months ago. It was messy and expensive and emotionally exhausting, but I got through it. The worst part wasn't even the affair itself. It was the realization that I'd been living with someone who was capable of lying to my face for months. Someone who'd built an entire secret life while pretending everything was fine. I don't trust easily anymore. I probably won't for a while, but at least I know the truth now, and I'm not wasting any more of my life on someone who didn't value what we had. The credit card notification, though, that's what gets me. All those months of lies, and he got caught because he used our joint credit card for a date with his girlfriend. If he just used his own card, I might never have known. I guess I should be grateful he was that stupid. Next story. I was a junior in college, majoring in English. I'd always been a strong writer, good grades, positive feedback from professors, genuine love for the craft. I took a creative writing course that semester with Professor Harmon. He was well regarded in the department, published a few books, had been teaching for over 20 years. The major assignment for the course was a short story. We had the entire semester to work on it, with the final draft due at the end of the term. It was worth 40% of our grade. I worked on that story for months. I drafted, revised, got feedback from friends, revised again. I poured everything into it. The story was about a strained relationship between a mother and daughter, inspired loosely by my own family dynamics, but fictionalized enough to be its own thing. I submitted it 2 weeks before the deadline, feeling proud of what I'd created. A week later, I got an email from Professor Harmon asking me to meet him during office hours. No explanation, just a request to come in. I showed up, nervous but not overly concerned. Maybe he wanted to talk about the story, offer some feedback. When I walked into his office, his expression was serious. "Sit down," he said. I sat. He opened his laptop and turned it toward me. My story was on the screen. "I need to ask you something," he said. "Did you write this yourself?" I blinked. "Yes, of course." "You're sure?" "Yes." "Why are you asking?" He leaned back in his chair, studying me. "Because this is exceptionally good. Too good for an undergraduate." I didn't know if that was a compliment or an accusation. "Thank you." "I don't think you understand," he said. "This level of prose, this complexity of character development, it's beyond what I'd expect from a student at your level. It reads like something from a published author." I felt a chill run through me. "Are you saying you don't think I wrote it?" "I'm saying I have concerns." "What kind of concerns?" "That this may not be your original work." I stared at him, stunned. "You think I plagiarized this?" "I think it's a possibility that needs to be investigated." "I didn't plagiarize anything. I wrote every word of that story." "Then you won't mind if I run it through a plagiarism checker?" "Go ahead," I said, my voice shaking with anger and disbelief. "You won't find anything because I wrote it." He did run it through a checker, right there, in front of me. The result came back clean, no matches found. "That doesn't necessarily mean anything," he said. You could have worked with someone else who wrote it for you, or paraphrased from an unpublished source. I didn't. I wrote it. I have drafts. I have my notes. I can show you my entire writing process. I'd like to see that. I went back to my dorm room, furious and humiliated, and gathered everything. My brainstorming notes, my rough drafts, my revision notes, feedback from friends. I compiled it all and sent it to him. He responded 2 days later. This doesn't definitively prove authorship. I'm moving forward with an academic integrity investigation. I couldn't believe it. An academic integrity investigation meant I'd have to go before a committee and defend myself. If they found me guilty of plagiarism, I could be expelled. My entire academic career was on the line because I'd written a story that was too good. I contacted the dean of students and explained the situation. She was sympathetic, but said the process had to run its course. I hired a lawyer. Well, my parents hired a lawyer. We couldn't afford it, but they took out a loan because they knew how serious this was. The hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks later. In the meantime, I did everything I could to build my case. I gathered evidence, all my drafts, with timestamps showing the progression of the story over several months. Emails and texts with friends who'd read and given feedback on the story. My journal entries from the semester, where I'd written about ideas for the story. Examples of other writing I'd done in high school and previous college courses, showing a consistent writing style. I also reached out to my other professors. Several of them wrote letters on my behalf, attesting to my writing ability and academic integrity. The hearing was terrifying. I sat in a room with 5 faculty members, my lawyer beside me, and had to defend the fact that I'd written my own story. Professor Harmon presented his case first. He argued that the quality of my work was inconsistent with what I'd submitted earlier in the semester, which had been shorter assignments and wasn't as polished. He said that the sophistication of the prose and the narrative structure indicated a level of experience beyond an undergraduate. Then it was my turn. My lawyer walked the committee through all my evidence, the drafts, the emails, the journal entries, the letters from other professors. She also pointed out that Professor Harmon hadn't provided any actual evidence of plagiarism, just his subjective opinion that the work was too good. One of the committee members asked me to talk about my writing process. I explained how I'd developed the story, what inspired it, how I'd revised it. I talked about specific scenes and why I'd made certain choices. Another committee member asked why this story was so much better than my earlier work in the class. Because I spent months on it, I said. The earlier assignments were written in a week or two. This story, I worked on all semester. I revised it over and over. Of course it's better. The hearing lasted 2 hours. A week later, I got the decision. The committee found no evidence of plagiarism. My story was my own work. I was cleared. Professor Harmon was required to issue a formal apology, which he did, though it was stiff and clearly reluctant. I finished the semester with an A in his class, though our relationship was irreparably damaged. He never made eye contact with me again. The whole experience left me shaken. I'd been punished for being good at something. I'd had to prove that my own work was mine. And the worst part? Professor Harmon faced no consequences. He'd made a baseless accusation, put me through hell, and forced my family into debt to defend me, and nothing happened to him. I graduated a year later and never looked back, but I still think about that hearing sometimes. How close I came to losing everything. Because one professor couldn't believe a student was capable of good work. It makes me angry all over again. Let's move on to the next story. I dated a guy named Ryan for about 2 years. The relationship was intense. Lots of highs, lots of lows, very dramatic. We broke up and got back together at least 4 times before finally calling it quits for good. The breakup was messy. He didn't want it to end. I did. He spent weeks trying to convince me to give it another shot. I held firm. Eventually, he seemed to accept it and moved on. Or so I thought. About 6 months after the breakup, I started seeing someone new. His name was Alex. We'd met through mutual friends, and he was everything Ryan wasn't. Stable, communicative, emotionally mature. It was refreshing. Alex and I had been dating for about 2 months when weird things started happening. First, Alex got a friend request on social media from a blank profile. No name, no photo. He ignored it. Then he started getting messages. Anonymous messages saying things like, "You should ask your girlfriend about her ex," and "She's not who you think she is." Alex told me about it. I immediately suspected Ryan. "It's probably my ex," I said. He didn't take the breakup well. "What should I do?" Alex asked. "Ignore it. Block the account. He'll get bored eventually." Alex blocked the account, but it didn't stop. A few days later, Alex got an email from an anonymous email address. The email contained screenshots of old text conversations between me and Ryan, conversations from when we were together, arguing about stupid stuff, me venting about being frustrated. The screenshots were taken out of context to make me look bad. One text, where I'd said, "I need space," during a fight, was presented as if I'd been cheating or hiding something. Alex showed me the email. "What's this about?" I explained the context. "Those texts are from when Ryan and I were together. He's twisting them to make it look like I was doing something wrong. I wasn't. We just fought a lot. Why is he sending me this? Because he's trying to sabotage our relationship." Alex believed me, but I could tell he was unsettled. And I couldn't blame him. No one wants to be in the middle of someone else's drama. The harassment continued. More emails, more messages, all anonymous, but clearly from Ryan. He sent Alex photos of me and Ryan together from when we were dating, with captions like, "She always goes back to him." He created a fake social media account pretending to be one of my friends, and messaged Alex saying I was still hung up on my ex. It was relentless. I confronted Ryan. I texted him, "I know you're sending stuff to Alex. Stop." He played dumb. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Yes, you do. Leave us alone." "I'm not doing anything. Maybe you should ask yourself why people are warning him about you." I blocked him. But that didn't stop the harassment. He just found new ways to do it. Alex was getting frustrated. "I like you, but this is a lot. If he doesn't stop, I don't know if I can deal with this." I didn't want to lose Alex because of Ryan's pettiness. So I did something I probably should have done earlier. I went to the police. I brought all the messages, the emails, the fake accounts. I explained the situation. My ex was harassing my new boyfriend in an attempt to ruin our relationship. The officer I spoke with was sympathetic, but said there wasn't much they could do unless Ryan made a direct threat. "This is harassment," I said. "It's borderline," the officer said, "but it's hard to prove it's him if he's using anonymous accounts." "Who else would it be?" "I understand, but legally, we need more concrete evidence." I left the police station feeling defeated. Then I had an idea. I asked Alex to respond to one of the anonymous emails, to say something like, "If you have something to say it to my face." The response came back within an hour. "Meet me at a local bar tomorrow at 8. We'd baited him. Alex and I went to the bar. Ryan was there, sitting in a booth, looking smug. "So you do know it's me," Ryan said when we walked over. "Of course I know it's you," I said. "Who else would be this pathetic?" "I'm just making sure he knows what he's getting into," Ryan said, nodding at Alex. "You're harassing us," Alex said. "It needs to stop." "Or what?" Ryan challenged. "Or we go back to the police with proof that you admitted to this," I said, holding up my phone. I've been recording the conversation. Ryan's face went pale. "You can't record me without my consent." "Actually, in this state I can. It's a one-party consent law." "Look it up." Ryan stood up, angry now. "You think you're so smart." "I think you need to move on," I said. "We're done. We've been done. Leave us alone." "Or what? You'll go to the police with a recording of me saying I sent a few emails?" "Yes. And we'll file for a restraining order. And I'll make sure everyone we know finds out what you've been doing." Ryan stared at us for a long moment. Then he grabbed his jacket and left without another word. The harassment stopped after that. No more emails, no more messages, no more fake accounts. Alex and I stayed together. We've been dating for over a year now, and things are great. Ryan, as far as I know, moved on. I hope he's less of a mess now than he was back then. But that whole situation taught me something. Some people can't handle rejection. And when they can't handle it, they'll do whatever they can to make you miserable. The best thing you can do is document everything, stand your ground, and not let them win. Next story. I worked at a marketing agency for 5 years. Started as an intern, worked my way up to account manager. I was good at my job, brought in clients, exceeded targets, did everything they asked. My boss, Richard, was a nightmare. Micromanaging, condescending, took credit for other people's work. He played favorites, and I was not one of them. For 5 years, I put up with it. I told myself it was worth it for the experience, for the resume building, for the potential to move up. But there's only so much a person can take. The final straw came during a pitch meeting with a potential client. I'd spent 3 weeks preparing the presentation, research, strategy, creative concepts, the whole package. I'd stayed late every night, worked through weekends. The morning of the pitch, Richard pulled me aside. "I'm going to handle the presentation today." "What? Why?" "Because this is a big client, and I need to make sure it's done right. I've been working on this for 3 weeks. I know the material inside and out. And I appreciate that, but I'm taking the lead." I was furious, but what could I do? He was the boss. The pitch went well. The client loved the strategy. They signed on the spot. A 6-figure contract. Back at the office, Richard gathered the team. "Great work today, everyone. This is a huge win for the agency." He didn't mention me once, not once, even though it was entirely my work. I went back to my desk, opened my laptop, and started drafting my resignation letter. I didn't just quit, though. I had a plan. See, over the 5 years I'd been there, I'd built relationships with most of our major clients. They liked working with me. They trusted me. And I knew that if I left, several of them would probably follow. I reached out to 3 of our biggest clients quietly. I told them I was leaving the agency and starting my own consulting business. I asked if they'd be interested in continuing to work with me. All 3 said yes. Then I scheduled a meeting with Richard and the agency owner. I walked into that meeting with my resignation letter and a list of the clients who were coming with me. "I'm resigning, effective immediately," I said, sliding the letter across the table. "And I'm taking these clients with me." Richard's face went red. "You can't do that. Those are agency clients." "Actually, I can. I checked my contract. There's no non-compete clause, and the clients have already agreed to work with me directly." The agency owner looked at the list. His expression darkened. "This is 3 of our top 5 accounts." "I know." "You're sabotaging us," Richard said. "No, I'm taking the relationships I built and the work I did, and I'm doing it independently. You should have thought about that before you took credit for my work for 5 years." Richard started yelling, called me unprofessional, disloyal, a backstabber. I let him finish. Then I said, "I've been professional for 5 years. I've been loyal to clients, not to a boss who treats me like garbage. And if standing up for myself makes me a backstabber, I'm fine with that." I stood up, walked out, and never went back. Within a month, I had my consulting business up and running. The 3 clients I took with me gave me enough revenue to sustain myself while I built up my client roster. Within 6 months, I doubled my income from what I was making at the agency. Within a year, I had 10 clients and had to hire an assistant to keep up with the workload. Richard's agency, meanwhile, took a hit. Losing 3 major clients in one day damaged their reputation. They had to lay off staff. Richard himself was demoted. The agency owner blamed him for losing me and the clients. I ran into Richard at an industry event about 2 years after I left. He tried to act like everything was fine, like we were old colleagues catching up. "Good to see you doing well," he said stiffly. "Thanks," I said. "You too." We both knew it was a lie. Starting my own business was the best decision I ever made. I work with people I respect. I set my own hours. I get paid what I'm worth. And I never have to deal with someone like Richard again. Quitting that job wasn't just satisfying, it was freedom. Let's dive into the next one. My grandmother passed away when I was 25. She'd been sick for a while, so it wasn't unexpected, but it was still hard. She was one of my favorite people, kind, funny, always supportive. She left a will. It was straightforward. Her house and savings were to be divided equally among her 3 children, my mom, my uncle, and my aunt. She also left a specific bequest to me, a collection of jewelry that had been in our family for generations, pieces from her mother, her grandmother, going back over 100 years. It wasn't worth a fortune, but it was valuable both sentimentally and monetarily. She'd always told me she wanted me to have it. She knew I appreciated the history, and she trusted me to take care of it. The will reading was tense. My Aunt Linda had always been difficult, demanding, entitled, constantly stirring up drama. She was upset that the estate was being split equally, even though that was the fair thing to do. When the lawyer read the part about the jewelry going to me, Linda interrupted. "That's not right," she said. "What do you mean?" the lawyer asked. "My mother promised me that jewelry. She told me years ago I'd inherit it." "That's not what the will says," the lawyer said patiently. "I don't care what the will says. She promised it to me." "Linda, if it's not in the will, there's nothing we can do," my mom said. "This is ridiculous," Linda said. She was probably confused when she made the will. She was old and sick. "She was perfectly coherent," the lawyer said. "The will is legally binding." Linda glared at me. "You manipulated her. You convinced her to give it to you." "I didn't manipulate anyone," I said. "Grandma wanted me to have it." "We'll see about that," Linda said, and stormed out. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. A week later, my mom called me. "Linda is contesting the will." "On what grounds?" "She's claiming Grandma wasn't mentally competent when she made the will. She's arguing that the jewelry should go to her as the eldest daughter." "That's insane. Grandma was completely coherent. She knew exactly what she was doing." "I know, but Linda's hired a lawyer. This is going to be a fight." The legal battle dragged on for months. Linda's lawyer argued that my grandmother had been on medication that could have affected her judgment, that she'd been easily influenced, that the will didn't reflect her true wishes. It was all nonsense, but it was enough to delay the probate process. During this time, the jewelry was held by the estate. I couldn't access it, even though it was legally mine according to the will. Linda started spreading rumors in the family. She told people I'd taken advantage of Grandma, that I'd pressured her into changing the will, that I was greedy and manipulative. Some family members believed her, others stayed neutral. A few reached out to me privately to express support, but no one wanted to publicly take sides. It was exhausting and hurtful. I was grieving my grandmother, and instead of being able to move forward, I was stuck in a legal battle with my aunt over jewelry that was rightfully mine. The case finally went before a judge. My mom and I had to testify. We brought evidence, letters from Grandma's doctors confirming she was mentally competent, testimony from the lawyer who'd helped her draft the will, records showing the will had been updated years before she got sick. Linda's case fell apart under scrutiny. The judge ruled in my favor. The will stood. The jewelry was mine. Linda was ordered to pay the estate's legal fees, which were substantial. She never spoke to me again. She cut off contact with my mom, too, blaming her for siding with me, even though my mom had just been following the will. I finally got the jewelry about a year after Grandma died. By that point, the whole experience had tainted what should have been a meaningful inheritance. I keep the jewelry in a safe deposit box now. I wear pieces occasionally, but every time I do, I think about the legal battle, about Linda's accusations, about how something that was supposed to be a gift from my grandmother turned into a nightmare. Linda never apologized. She still tells anyone who'll listen that I stole her inheritance. But I have the jewelry, and more importantly, I have the knowledge that I didn't do anything wrong. Grandma made her wishes clear, and I honored them. That's all that matters. Next story. I had a close group of friends in my mid-20s. 5 of us. Myself, Kate, Emma, Jordan. and Michelle. We'd all met through work and had become genuinely close. Dinners, weekend trips, group chats that went all day. It felt like the kind of friendship that would last forever. Then I found out they'd been talking about me behind my back for months. It started with something small. I'd noticed that group plans were sometimes made without me. I'd see photos on social media of the four of them hanging out, and I hadn't been invited. At first, I brushed it off. People don't have to invite everyone to everything. It's fine to have different friend dynamics, but it kept happening. More and more, I was being left out. I brought it up casually with Kate one day. "Hey, I saw you guys got together last weekend. I didn't realize there was a plan." "Oh, it was super last minute," Kate said quickly. "Emma just texted, and we all happened to be free." "That's cool. Would have been fun to join if I'd known." "Yeah, next time for sure." There wasn't a next time. Or rather, there was. But I wasn't invited to that either. I started to feel paranoid. Was I being excluded on purpose? Had I done something wrong? I tried talking to Emma. She gave me the same line. Things were just spontaneous. No big deal. Not personal. But it felt personal. Then I found out the truth in the worst way possible. Jordan accidentally added me to a group chat. Not our main group chat, a different one. One that included everyone except me. The chat was called Planning. I opened it, confused, and started scrolling through the messages. They were talking about me. Not in a "we're worried about her" way. In a "she's so annoying" way. There were messages from weeks ago. Emma complaining that I always dominated conversations. Kate saying I was too sensitive and took everything personally. Michelle saying she was tired of me, always making things about myself. Jordan had written, "Honestly, I just don't want to deal with her drama right now." I felt sick. These were my friends, people I trusted, people I thought cared about me, and they'd been trash-talking me behind my back for months. I took screenshots of everything. Then I left the group chat. Jordan noticed immediately. She texted me, "Oh God, I'm so sorry. That was an accident." I didn't respond. She called. I didn't answer. Then Kate called. Then Emma. Then Michelle. I ignored all of them. Finally, Kate sent a long text. "Can we please talk? I know you saw the chat, and I'm so sorry. We were just venting. We didn't mean any of it." I responded, "You meant it. Otherwise you wouldn't have said it. We were frustrated. Everyone vents about their friends sometimes. Not like that, and not for months. Please, let's just meet and talk this through." I agreed to meet, not because I wanted to salvage the friendships, but because I wanted to hear them try to explain themselves. We met at a coffee shop. All four of them were there, looking guilty and uncomfortable. Kate started, "We're really sorry. The group chat was a mistake. We should have talked to you directly if we had issues." "What issues?" I asked, because I had no idea you all felt this way. Emma spoke up. "You can be a lot sometimes. Like, you talk a lot and don't always listen." "And you're really sensitive," Michelle added. "It's hard to be honest with you because you take everything so personally." I stared at them. "So instead of telling me, you just talked about me behind my back and started excluding me?" "We didn't know how to bring it up," Kate said. "You could have said something, anything. Instead, you created a whole separate group chat to complain about me." "We were venting," Jordan said. "It wasn't meant to hurt you." "But it did," I said. "You made me feel like I was going crazy. I kept wondering why I was being left out. And the whole time you were doing it on purpose." They tried to apologize more, but I wasn't interested. The damage was done. I told them I needed space. They said they understood and would give me time. I never reached out again. A few of them tried to contact me over the next few months. Kate sent periodic texts, checking in. Emma reached out on my birthday. Jordan sent a long apology email. I didn't respond to any of it. It's been 3 years now. I've built new friendships, healthier ones, with people who communicate honestly instead of talking behind each other's backs. I don't miss that friend group. What I miss is the illusion of what I thought that friendship was. But I'm better off without people who couldn't be honest with me. And I'm better off knowing that real friends don't need a separate group chat to trash talk you. Let's move to the next one. I rented an apartment for 3 years, and it was a decent place, nothing fancy, but clean and well maintained. I paid rent on time every month, never caused problems, took good care of the space. When my lease was up, I decided to move. I gave my landlord, Mr. Chen, 60 days notice as required. Before I moved out, I deep cleaned the entire apartment. I scrubbed the floors, cleaned the walls, wiped down every surface. I repaired a small nail hole in the wall from where I'd hung a picture. I made sure everything was in the same condition it was when I moved in. I took photos of everything, every room, every corner, every detail. I heard horror stories about landlords keeping security deposits for bogus reasons, and I wanted documentation. On move-out day, Mr. Chen did a walkthrough with me. He looked around, nodded, said everything looked fine. "You'll get your deposit back within 30 days, he said. My security deposit was $1,500, a significant amount of money. 30 days passed. No deposit, no communication. I called Mr. Chen. He didn't answer. I left a voicemail. A week later, I got a letter in the mail. It was an itemized list of deductions from my security deposit. Carpet cleaning, $300. Wall repainting, $500 cleaning fees, $200 minor repairs, $300. Total deductions, $1,300. He was returning $200 of my $1,500 deposit. I was furious. The carpet had been professionally cleaned before I moved in, and I'd kept it clean the entire time I lived there. There were no stains, no damage. The walls didn't need repainting. They were in perfect condition. The one nail hole I'd made, I'd patched and painted myself. And cleaning fees? I'd left the place spotless. I called Mr. Chen again. This time he answered. "I got your letter about the deposit deductions," I said. "I don't agree with any of them. The carpet needed to be cleaned," he said, "and the walls had marks. The carpet was clean." "And what marks?" "I have photos from move-out day showing everything in perfect condition. I don't know what to tell you. That's what it costs to get the place rent-ready. You're legally required to provide receipts for these expenses. I'll send them." He never did. I waited another week. Still no receipts. I filed a complaint with the local housing authority. In my state, landlords are required to return security deposits within 30 days and provide itemized deductions with proof of expenses. Mr. Chen had done neither properly. The housing authority contacted him. He sent me a snarky email saying I was making a big deal out of nothing and that he'd already explained the charges. Still no receipts. I decided to take him to small claims court. Filing was simple and inexpensive, about $75. I submitted my evidence, the move-out photos, the lease agreement, the letter with the bogus deductions, documentation of my attempts to get receipts. The court date was set for 6 weeks later. Mr. Chen didn't think I'd follow through. When he got the court summons, he called me, suddenly much friendlier. "Let's just settle this," he said. "I'll give you back another $500. We can call it even." "No, you owe me the full deposit. I'm not settling." "You're really going to take this to court over a security deposit? You're really going to steal my money and hope I don't fight back?" He huffed and hung up. The court date arrived. I showed up with all my documentation organized and ready. Mr. Chen showed up with nothing, no receipts, no evidence, just excuses. The judge asked him to provide proof of the expenses he'd claimed. "I don't have receipts with me," Mr. Chen said. "Why not?" the judge asked. "I didn't think I'd need them. You're in court disputing a security deposit. Of course you need receipts." Mr. Chen fumbled through some explanation about how he'd done the work himself, so there were no receipts. "So you charged her $300 for carpet cleaning, but you cleaned the carpet yourself?" the judge asked. "Well, I paid someone, but I don't have the receipt." "And the wall repainting? The cleaning fees?" Mr. Chen couldn't provide satisfactory answers. The judge reviewed my photos. She looked at the move-out checklist Mr. Chen had signed, saying everything was fine. She noted that he'd failed to provide any evidence of the claimed expenses. "I'm ruling in favor of the plaintiff," the judge said. "The landlord is ordered to return the full security deposit of $1,500 plus the court filing fee of $75 for a total of $1,575. Payment is due within 14 days. I won." Mr. Chen looked furious, but there was nothing he could do. 14 days later, I received a check for the full amount. I learned something important from that experience. Landlords count on tenants not fighting back. They make bogus deductions because most people won't go through the hassle of disputing them. But if you document everything and know your rights, you can win. And it feels pretty damn satisfying. Next story coming up. My brother Matt and I have always been close. Growing up, we had the typical sibling dynamic. We fought sometimes, but we also had each other's backs. As adults, we stayed in touch, saw each other regularly, supported each other through life's ups and downs. When Matt met his girlfriend, Vanessa, I was happy for him. He seemed smitten. They'd been dating for about a year when he proposed, and she said yes. I was excited. My brother was getting married. The problem started during wedding planning. Vanessa had very specific ideas about how everything should be. The venue, the colors, the guest list, the seating arrangements. She wasn't just particular, she was controlling. Matt went along with most of it. He wanted her to be happy, and he figured it was her day as much as his. About 4 months before the wedding, Vanessa asked to meet me for coffee. Just the two of us. I thought maybe she wanted to talk about bridesmaid stuff, or get my opinion on something. Instead, she wanted to talk about the guest list. "So, I've been thinking about the wedding," she started, "and we're trying to keep things intimate, small, just close family and friends." "That sounds nice," I said. "The thing is, we're over budget, and we need to cut some people from the list." "Okay, that makes sense." She took a breath. "I was hoping you'd understand if we had to make some tough decisions." I had a sinking feeling. "What kind of decisions?" "Well, you're +1. We're thinking it might be better if you came solo." I'd been dating someone for 6 months. Not super serious, but serious enough that I'd expected to bring him to the wedding. "Vanessa, I already told him he was invited." "I know, and I'm sorry, but we just don't have room. Matt's my brother. I kind of assumed I'd get a +1. You will, just maybe not this time." I was annoyed, but tried to be understanding. "Okay, if that's what you need to do." "Thank you," she said, looking relieved. "I knew you'd get it." I texted Matt later to confirm. He seemed surprised. "Vanessa didn't tell me she was cutting your +1, he said. "Let me talk to her." The next day, Matt called. "You're fine to bring your boyfriend. Vanessa was just stressed about numbers. Don't worry about it." I thought that was the end of it. 2 months before the wedding, Vanessa asked to meet again. This time, she got straight to the point. "We're still over budget. I need to cut more people." "Okay." "I was thinking, since you're not in the bridal party, maybe you could sit this one out." I blinked. Sit out the wedding? My brother's wedding? I know it's awkward, but we're really trying to keep it small. And honestly, Matt has a lot of family on his side. It's making the guest list uneven. "Vanessa, I'm his sister." "I know. And maybe we can do a separate celebration with you after. Like a little dinner or something." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Does Matt know you're asking me this?" She hesitated. "Not yet. I wanted to talk to you first." "This is insane. You can't uninvite me for my own brother's wedding." "I'm not uninviting you. I'm just asking if you'd be willing to step back to help us out." "No, absolutely not." Her expression hardened. "I was hoping you'd be more flexible. And I was hoping you wouldn't try to exclude me from one of the most important days of my brother's life." I left the coffee shop and immediately called Matt. "Did Vanessa talk to you about cutting people from the guest list?" I asked. "Yeah, we've been discussing it." "Why? Did she mention cutting me?" Silence. "Matt, she brought it up," he said quietly. I told her no. "She just asked me to sit out the wedding." "She what?" She met me for coffee and asked if I'd be willing to not come to the wedding because you have too much family on your side. Matt was furious. I'll talk to her. That night, all hell broke loose. Matt and Vanessa had a massive fight. He called me later to tell me what happened. She said she was just trying to manage the budget and the guest list. Matt said, "She claims she never actually asked you not to come, just floated the idea. She absolutely asked me not to come." "I believe you. I told her that you're my sister, and there's no way you're not coming to the wedding. If we have to cut people, it'll be distant cousins or coworkers, not you." "Thank you. I'm sorry she put you in that position." The wedding happened. I was there. Vanessa was cold to me the entire day, barely acknowledged me, didn't include me in any photos that weren't mandatory family shots. The whole day felt uncomfortable. I could tell she resented me for not bowing out like she'd wanted. Matt and Vanessa's marriage lasted 2 years. They got divorced after constant fighting about control, boundaries, and priorities. After the divorce, Matt apologized to me. "I should have seen the red flags. The way she treated you during the wedding planning was a sign of how she was going to treat everyone." "I'm just glad you're out of it now," I said. "Me too. We're closer now than we were before, and he's dating someone new, someone who actually respects his family and doesn't try to cut his sister out of major life events. Vanessa, as far as I know, is still trying to control everything in her life, but at least it's not my problem anymore." Let's get into the next story. I've been going to the same gym for about 3 years. It was a local place, not a big chain, and I liked the community feel. The owner, Greg, seemed like a decent guy. Friendly, invested in his members, always around to chat. The membership fees were reasonable, $50 a month, no contract, cancel anytime. Pretty standard. Then Greg introduced a new program. Personal training packages. He pitched it hard. Posters everywhere, constant emails, staff pushing it on members. The packages weren't cheap. $300 for 6 sessions, $500 for 12 sessions. I wasn't interested in personal training, but a lot of members signed up. Greg made it sound like a great deal, and the trainers seemed qualified enough. About 2 months after the program launched, I noticed something weird. I was at the gym early one morning, and I overheard Greg talking to one of the trainers. They were by the front desk, and I was stretching nearby. "Just log the sessions even if they cancel," Greg said. "We're not doing refunds." The trainer looked uncomfortable. "But if they cancel with notice, shouldn't we reschedule?" "No. If they can't make it, that's on them. The session counts as used." I stopped stretching and listened more carefully. "What if they ask for their money back?" The trainer said. "Tell them it's in the contract. No refunds, no rescheduling." They signed the agreement. The trainer nodded and walked away, still looking uneasy. I pulled up the personal training contract on my phone. It was on the gym's website. I read through it carefully. Buried in the fine print was a clause. Missed sessions cannot be rescheduled and will be counted as completed. No refunds will be issued for unused sessions. That seemed shady, but technically, it was in the contract. Then I started paying attention to how Greg was running the program. Members would sign up for packages and schedule sessions, but the trainers were often double booked or unavailable. Members would have to cancel and try to reschedule, but they'd be told the trainers were fully booked for weeks. Meanwhile, Greg was marking those canceled sessions as completed and refusing refunds or rescheduling. People were paying hundreds of dollars for training sessions they couldn't actually attend. I decided to test it myself. I bought a 6-session package, $300. I scheduled my first session. The trainer was great, no issues. For my second session, I got a call 2 hours before. "Hey, your trainer is sick. We need to reschedule." "Okay, when's the next available time?" "Let me check it. Looks like the earliest is 3 weeks from now." 3 weeks. For a session I'd already paid for. I agreed to the reschedule. 2 days later, I checked my account on the gym's member portal. The canceled session was marked as Zito completed. I went to the front desk. "I have a question about my training package. It says I've used 2 sessions, but I've only had 1. The second was canceled. The staff member checked the system. It looks like you missed your second session, so it was counted as used. I didn't miss it. The trainer was sick, and I was told to reschedule. Unfortunately, our policy is that canceled sessions count as used. Even if the trainer cancels? Yes, it's in the contract. I pulled up the contract on my phone and read it aloud. It says missed sessions cannot be rescheduled. It doesn't say anything about trainer cancellations. The staff member looked uncomfortable. I'll have to check with Greg. Greg wasn't there that day. I left, furious, and started talking to other members. Turns out, I wasn't the only one. Multiple people had similar stories. Trainers canceling, sessions marked as completed, refunds refused. One woman had paid $500 for 12 sessions and had only been able to attend 3 before the trainers became unavailable. She tried to get a refund, but Greg told her it wasn't possible. I decided to do something about it. I created a spreadsheet and started documenting everything. My own experience, stories from other members, screenshots of the contract, records of canceled sessions. Then I filed a complaint with the State Consumer Protection Agency. I also posted about it on social media and in local community groups. I didn't name the gym at first, just described the situation and asked if anyone else had experienced something similar. Dozens of people responded. Many of them were members of the same gym. The story picked up traction. A local news station reached out and asked if they could do a segment. I said yes. The news segment aired 2 weeks later. It featured interviews with multiple members, documentation of the shady contract terms, and an attempt to get a comment from Greg, who refused to go on camera. The fallout was immediate. Members started canceling their memberships in droves. The gym's social media was flooded with negative reviews. The Consumer Protection Agency launched an investigation. Greg tried to do damage control. He sent an email to all members apologizing and offering refunds to anyone who felt they'd been treated unfairly. It was too little, too late. Within 3 months, the gym closed. Greg claimed it was due to financial difficulties, but everyone knew it was because he'd been running a scam and got caught. I felt bad for the trainers and staff who lost their jobs. They weren't the problem. Greg was. But I didn't feel bad about exposing the scam. People had paid good money for a service they didn't receive, and Greg had knowingly taken advantage of them. Sometimes you have to speak up, even if it means burning bridges. And in this case, the bridge deserved to burn. Next story. I'd been with my partner Sam for 4 years. We lived together, shared finances, had built a life together. We weren't married, but we might as well have been. Sam's family had always been polite to me, not warm, not cold, just polite. I chalked it up to them being reserved. Sam's younger sister, Emily, was getting married. It was a big deal. Huge wedding, 200 guests, destination venue. The family had been planning it for over a year. Sam was in the wedding party as a groomsman. Emily's fiancé didn't have enough friends, so he'd asked Sam to fill a spot. I assumed I'd be invited as Sam's +1. We'd been together for years. Of course I'd be invited. The save the dates went out. Sam got one. I didn't. Did my invitation get lost in the mail? I asked Sam. Sam looked uncomfortable. I need to talk to Emily about that. What do you mean? I don't think you're invited. I stared. What? I don't know for sure. Let me ask. Sam called Emily that night. I could hear bits of the conversation from the other room. When Sam came back, the look on their face told me everything. Emily said the wedding is family only. No +1s except for married couples. We've been together for 4 years. I know. We live together. We share a bank account. We're more committed than half the married couples I know. I know. But it's her wedding, and she wants to keep it small. 200 people isn't small. Sam didn't have a good response to that. I was hurt. Not just excluded, but intentionally excluded. This wasn't about budget or space. This was about Sam's family not considering me part of the family. Are you going to push back on this? I asked. Sam hesitated. It's Emily's day. I don't want to cause drama. So you're just going to go without me? I don't know what else to do. You could stand up for me. You could tell your family that excluding me is hurtful and not okay. I'll talk to them. Sam did talk to them. Emily and their parents said the same thing. Family only, no exceptions. What if we were married? I asked Sam. Would I be invited then? Probably. So the difference between me being family and not being family is a piece of paper? I guess so. The wedding was 3 months away. Sam went. I stayed home. The day of the wedding, I tried not to think about it. I went to a movie, got dinner by myself, tried to distract myself from the fact that my partner of 4 years was celebrating a major family milestone without me. Sam came home the next day and immediately apologized. I'm sorry. I should have pushed harder. It was wrong of them to exclude you. Yeah, it was. I talked to my parents about it. They said they didn't think it was a big deal because we're not married. And what did you say? I told them that you're my partner and that excluding you was disrespectful. Did they apologize? Not exactly. Of course not. Sam's family never acknowledged that what they did was hurtful. They acted like it was a non-issue, like I was being overly sensitive for being upset about it. My relationship with Sam's family has been strained ever since. I'm polite when I see them, but I keep my distance. I don't trust them. I don't feel welcome. Sam and I are still together, but the whole situation left a mark. It made me question whether Sam's family would ever truly accept me, and it made me wonder if Sam would always prioritize keeping the peace with their family over standing up for me. We've talked about it in therapy. Sam understands now why it was such a big deal, but understanding doesn't undo the hurt, and I don't know if I'll ever fully get over it. Let's dive into the next one. I know it sounds petty, but this drove me absolutely insane. I worked in an office with a shared break room and communal fridge. Standard setup. Everyone brought their lunch, stored it in the fridge, and that was that. It was an unspoken rule. You don't touch other people's food. For the first year I worked there, everything was fine. Then someone started stealing my lunch. Not every day, maybe twice a week at first. I'd go to the fridge at lunchtime, and my container would be gone. Or it would be there, but empty, shoved in the back of the fridge. The first few times I thought maybe I'd forgotten to bring lunch, or maybe I'd misplaced it. But it kept happening. I started labeling my containers with my name. Didn't help. I asked around the office, has anyone else had their lunch go missing? A few people said yes, actually. It had been happening to others too. We complained to HR. They sent out an email reminding everyone about kitchen etiquette and respecting other people's property. The lunch thefts stopped for about a week. Then they started again. I decided to figure out who was doing it. I started packing 2 lunches, one that I'd put in the fridge and one that I'd keep at my desk. That way, even if the fridge lunch was stolen, I'd still have something to eat. The fridge lunch disappeared 3 times that week. I set up a small camera in my lunch bag. It was one of those tiny spy cameras you can buy online. I positioned it so it would record whoever opened my container. 2 days later, I checked the footage. It was Derek, a guy from the sales team. He'd opened the fridge, looked around to make sure no one was watching, grabbed my container, and walked back to his desk with it. I was furious, but I also wanted to handle this strategically. I made a new lunch. This time, I added something special, a Carolina Reaper hot sauce. For those who don't know, Carolina Reapers are some of the hottest peppers in the world. I mixed a generous amount into a pasta dish, making sure it looked normal but was absolutely loaded with heat. I put it in the fridge with a big label, "Do not eat extremely spicy." Then I waited. Around noon, I heard a commotion from the sales area. Someone was coughing, sputtering, running to the water cooler. It was Derek. His face was red, tears streaming down his cheeks. He was gulping water like his life depended on it. I walked over, all innocent concern. "Are you okay?" He could barely speak. What was in that?" "In what?" "Your lunch. What did you put in it?" "Oh, you mean the lunch that was clearly labeled as extremely spicy?" The lunch that had my name on it? The lunch that you stole? Derek's face went from red to pale. I didn't. You didn't what? Steal my lunch. 'Cause I have you on camera doing exactly that. The whole office was watching now. Derek tried to backtrack. I thought it was left over. I didn't realize it had my name on it, and a warning label, and it was in a container that you've been stealing from for weeks. He didn't have a response. I went to HR with the camera footage. Derek was called in for a meeting. He admitted to taking lunches. Not just mine, but several other people's too. He claimed he was forgetful and would sometimes grab the wrong container by mistake. No one believed him. HR gave him a formal warning and made him reimburse everyone whose lunch he'd stolen. He also had to send an apology email to the entire office. The lunch thefts stopped immediately after that. Derek avoided me for the rest of my time at that company, which was fine by me, and I never had to booby-trap my lunch again. Though I did keep the hot sauce in my desk drawer, just in case. Let's move on to the next story. I was fresh out of college, trying to break into the marketing industry. It's competitive, and I was sending out dozens of applications with very few responses. My best friend from college, Rachel, was in the same field. We'd been close since freshman year, studied together, interned at the same company one summer, talked constantly about our career goals. When we both graduated, we decided to move to the same city and look for jobs together. We figured we could support each other through the process. Rachel landed a job within 3 weeks, a good job at a well-known agency. I was happy for her, genuinely. Meanwhile, I was still job hunting. Month 1, month 2, month 3. I was getting interviews, but nothing was converting to offers. And the weird thing was, I'd get to second or third round interviews, feel like they went well, and then nothing. Radio silence, or a generic rejection email. It was frustrating and demoralizing. Rachel was sympathetic. The market is tough right now. You'll find something soon. Month 4, I got an interview at a company I was really excited about. The first interview went great. They asked me to come back for a second round, meeting with the team. The second interview also went well. The hiring manager seemed impressed, asked about my start date availability, talked about the team culture. I felt good about it. A week later, I got a rejection email. We've decided to move forward with another candidate. I was devastated. I thought I'd nailed it. I called Rachel to vent. She was supportive, told me something better would come along. 2 weeks later, I found out the truth in the most random way possible. I was at a networking event, one of those awkward mixer things where everyone's trying to make connections. I started chatting with a woman named Lisa, who worked in HR at various companies as a consultant. We got to talking about the job market, and I mentioned how tough it had been. "What kind of roles are you applying for?" she asked. I told her, marketing coordinator, junior account manager, that sort of thing. "Have you had any weird experiences with references?" she asked. "What do you mean?" "Like, have you ever had a reference that didn't match what you expected?" I thought about it. Not that I know of. Why? I've seen cases where people list someone as a reference, and that person ends up giving a bad review, intentionally or not. It can tank an application. A chill ran through me. How would I know if that happened? You could ask the hiring managers for feedback, or check with your references to see what they're saying. I listed 3 references on my applications: a former professor, a supervisor from an internship, and Rachel. I hadn't thought twice about listing Rachel. She was my best friend. Of course she'd give me a good reference. The next day, I called the company that had rejected me after the second interview. I asked if I could get feedback on why I wasn't selected. The hiring manager was surprisingly candid. "You were actually our top choice, but when we called your references, one of them raised some concerns." "What kind of concerns?" "They said you had issues with reliability and teamwork during your last internship, that you sometimes missed deadlines and had difficulty taking feedback." None of that was true, and I'd only had one internship where my supervisor had loved my work and written me a glowing recommendation letter. Can I ask which reference said that? I don't have the notes in front of me, but I believe it was someone named Rachel. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. I thanked the hiring manager and hung up. Then I called Rachel. Hey, did anyone call you for a reference recently? Oh, yeah, she said casually. A couple of companies. I told them you were great. Really? Because I just found out that you told one company I had problems with reliability and teamwork. Silence. Rachel, I I don't know what you're talking about. The company that rejected me 2 weeks ago. They called you. You told them I missed deadlines and couldn't take feedback. I didn't say that. Yes, you did. The hiring manager told me. More silence. Why would you do that? I asked, my voice shaking. I didn't. I mean, I was just trying to be honest. Honest about what? I never had any of those issues. Look, I just think maybe you're not ready for some of these roles. You're applying to jobs that are pretty competitive, and maybe you should start with something smaller. You've been sabotaging my applications. That's not. How many companies have called you for a reference? She didn't answer. Rachel, how many? I don't know, maybe 5 or 6. And what did you tell them? I told them the truth. What truth? That I'm unreliable? That I can't work in a team? None of that is true, and you know it. I was trying to help, she said, her voice defensive now. You're applying to jobs that are too advanced for you. I didn't want you to end up in a position where you'd fail. So you decided to make sure I wouldn't get any position at all? It's not like that. Then what is it like? She didn't have an answer. I hung up. I removed her from my reference list immediately. I reached out to every company I'd applied to in the past few months and explained that one of my references had provided inaccurate information and I'd replaced them with a different reference. Some companies were understanding. Others had already moved forward with other candidates. But within 2 weeks of removing Rachel from my references, I got a job offer. A great job. Better than the one I'd been rejected from. I never spoke to Rachel again. Looking back, I think she was threatened by me. We'd been equals in college, but once she got her job, and I was still struggling, she wanted to keep it that way. She wanted to be ahead, and the easiest way to do that was to hold me back. It's one of the worst betrayals I've experienced. Not just because she sabotaged my career, but because she pretended to support me while doing it. I'm in a much better place now, career-wise and personally, but I'll never forget what she did, and I'll never give anyone that kind of power over my future again. Next story coming up. I lived in a second-floor apartment for 2 years before the upstairs neighbor moved in. Before that, the third floor had been empty, and it was blissfully quiet. Then came Jordan. Jordan moved in on a Saturday. I heard the moving truck, the footsteps, the usual noise of someone settling in. No big deal. I figured I'd introduce myself later, be a friendly neighbor. That night, the noise started. It wasn't just footsteps, it was stomping, heavy, deliberate stomping, like someone was intentionally trying to make as much noise as possible. It went on until 2 in the morning. I figured it was a one-time thing. Moving day stress, maybe they were still unpacking. The next night, it happened again. Stomping, dragging furniture, loud music. By the third night, I'd had enough. I went upstairs and knocked on the door. Jordan answered. 20s, disheveled, looked annoyed that I'd interrupted whatever they were doing. Hey, I'm your downstairs neighbor, I said. Could you maybe keep it down a bit? The noise has been pretty loud the past few nights. Jordan shrugged. I'm just living my life. I get that, but it's after midnight, the stomping and the music. It's making it hard to sleep. I'll try to keep it down. They didn't. The noise continued every single night. Stomping, music, what sounded like furniture being dragged across the floor at random hours. I talked to my landlord. They said they'd send Jordan a reminder about quiet hours. Nothing changed. I knocked on Jordan's door again. This time, they didn't even open it, just yelled through the door. I already told you, I'll keep it down. They didn't keep it down. I started documenting everything. Times, types of noise, Duration. I recorded audio on my phone. After 2 weeks of this, I filed a formal noise complaint with the landlord and included all my documentation. The landlord talked to Jordan. Jordan claimed I was exaggerating, that they were just walking around their own apartment, and I was being overly sensitive. The noise got worse after that, almost like they were doing it on purpose now. I bought earplugs. They didn't help. I bought a white noise machine. Still didn't help. I was barely sleeping. I'd wake up multiple times a night from the stomping. My work performance was suffering because I was exhausted all the time. I talked to other neighbors. No one else seemed to be bothered. Or maybe they just didn't want to get involved. I considered moving, but I couldn't afford to break my lease. Then I had an idea. I researched my city's noise ordinances. Turns out, there are pretty specific rules about acceptable noise levels in multi-unit buildings, especially during nighttime hours. I called the non-emergency police line and asked about filing a noise complaint. They said if it was happening regularly, I could call, and an officer would come to verify the noise level. The next time the stomping started, around 11 p.m., I called. An officer showed up about 20 minutes later. The noise was still going. The officer went upstairs, knocked on Jordan's door, and had a conversation I couldn't hear. The stomping stopped, for one night. Then it started again. I called the police again, and again. Over the course of 2 weeks, I called 5 times. Each time, the officer would tell Jordan to keep it down. Each time, Jordan would comply for a night and then resume. But the documentation was building. Multiple police visits, multiple complaints to the landlord. Finally, the landlord had enough. They sent Jordan a formal lease violation notice. If the noise complaints continued, they'd face eviction. The noise stopped. Not completely. There were still normal footsteps and occasional sounds, but the intentional stomping and late-night disruptions ended. Jordan moved out 3 months later. I never found out if they left voluntarily or were forced out, but I didn't care. The new upstairs neighbors were quiet, respectful, normal. I finally got some sleep. That whole experience taught me that sometimes you have to be persistent. Document everything. Use official channels. Don't give up. And maybe think twice before renting a unit with neighbors above you. Let's move to the next story. I turned 30 last year. It's not a milestone I particularly cared about, but it felt significant. A new decade, a chance to reflect on life so far. All that stuff. I didn't want a big party. I just wanted to spend the day with the people I loved. Family, close friends, maybe a nice dinner. I'd mentioned my birthday to my family weeks in advance. My parents, my 2 siblings. Just casual mentions. Hey, my birthday's coming up, type of thing. The day arrived. I woke up, checked my phone. No messages. I figured people were busy. It was a weekday. I'd probably hear from them later. I went to work, came home. Still nothing. By evening, I was starting to feel hurt. Not a single text, call, or message from my family. I called my mom. She answered, sounded distracted. Hey mom, how's your day? Fine, busy. What's up? Just calling to say hi, see what you're up to. Oh, we're just having dinner. Your dad made spaghetti. That's nice. A pause. Did you need something? She asked. No, just wanted to talk. Okay, well, we're about to eat. Can I call you back later? Sure. She didn't call back. I sat on my couch, staring at my phone, feeling pathetic. Had my own mother really forgotten my birthday? I checked social media. My siblings had both posted that day. Random stuff, memes, nothing about me. I texted my brother. Hey, did you forget what today is? He responded an hour later. Tuesday? It's my birthday. Oh shit, sorry. Happy birthday. I've been swamped with work. That was it. No call, no follow-up. Just a quick text and an excuse. My sister didn't respond at all. The next day, I called my mom again. Did you realize you forgot my birthday yesterday? What? No, I didn't forget. You didn't say anything. You didn't even acknowledge it when I called. Oh, honey, I'm sorry. It's just been such a crazy week. You know how it is. Mom, it's my 30th birthday. I know, and I feel terrible. We'll make it up to you. We'll do dinner this weekend. That's not the point. You forgot. And now you're acting like it's no big deal. I'm not acting like it's no big deal. I said I'm sorry. You don't sound sorry. You sound like you're brushing it off. I don't know what you want me to say. I want you to acknowledge that forgetting your child's birthday is hurtful. She sighed. You're being dramatic. I hung up. The weekend dinner never happened. My mom didn't bring it up again, and I didn't push. My dad eventually texted me a generic, happy belated birthday message. No call, no explanation. My siblings never mentioned it again. I felt invisible. Like the people who were supposed to care about me the most couldn't be bothered to remember one day out of the year. I know it sounds petty. People forget things. Life gets busy. But it's not about the birthday itself. It's about feeling valued. And I didn't. My friends, on the other hand, remembered. They took me out for drinks, got me a cake, made me feel special. My chosen family showed up when my blood family didn't. I've distanced myself from my family since then. Not dramatically. I still see them on holidays, answer their calls when they reach out, but I'm not as invested. I don't prioritize them the way I used to, because they made it clear that I'm not a priority to them, and that's a hard thing to come back from. Let's dive into the final story. I was with Chris for 3 years. We met at work, started dating, moved in together after a year. Everything seemed normal. Good even. Chris traveled a lot for work. Sales conferences, client meetings, regional training events. It was part of the job, and I got used to it. Chris would be gone for a few days at a time, come home, we'd catch up, and then life would continue. I'd never had a reason to be suspicious, until I did. It started with little inconsistencies. Chris would say they were going to a conference in Chicago, but I'd see a charge from a restaurant in Denver on our shared credit card. When I asked about it, Chris would say the conference location changed, or that there was a last-minute client meeting in a different city. Then, there was the phone thing. Chris started keeping their phone face down all the time, changing passwords, taking calls in another room. I didn't want to be that person, the paranoid partner who accused someone without evidence, but the signs were adding up. One weekend, Chris said they had to fly to Seattle for an emergency client meeting. Last minute, unavoidable. I nodded, said okay, told them to have a safe flight. After Chris left, I did something I'm not proud of. I checked Chris's iPad, which was synced to their phone, and still logged into their iCloud. I opened the Messages app, and there it was. Another life. Messages to someone named Morgan. Intimate messages. I miss you. Can't wait to see you this weekend. I love you. Photos of Chris and Morgan together, at restaurants, on trips, in what looked like Morgan's apartment. I scrolled back through months of messages. This wasn't a new thing. Chris and Morgan had been together for over a year. Chris had an entire relationship I knew nothing about. I felt numb. I kept scrolling, reading through messages, looking at photos, trying to piece together the truth. Morgan lived in Seattle. That's where Chris had been going for a lot of those work trips. I took screenshots of everything. Then I texted Chris. I know about Morgan. 3 little dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, I can explain. I didn't respond. I just started packing Chris's things. Chris came home the next day, cut the trip short, walked into the apartment to find their belongings in boxes by the door. Please let me explain, Chris said. There's nothing to explain. You've been cheating on me for over a year. You've been living 2 separate lives. There's nothing you can say that will make this okay. I didn't mean for it to happen. You didn't accidentally date someone else for a year. Chris tried to justify it, said things with us had felt stale, that Morgan understood them in a way I didn't, that they'd been planning to tell me but didn't know how. I didn't want to hear it. Are you in love with Morgan? I asked. Chris hesitated, then nodded. Yes. Then go be with Morgan. Just get out of my apartment. Chris left. took the boxes, moved out that day. I later found out that Morgan didn't know about me either. Chris had told Morgan they were single. When Morgan found out Chris had a partner, they ended things too. Chris had been lying to both of us. I spent the next few months unraveling everything, canceling shared accounts, separating finances, removing Chris from my life piece by piece. It was exhausting and painful, but also clarifying. I'd spent 3 years with someone I didn't actually know. I'm single now. Dating is hard because I don't trust easily anymore. Every time someone's phone buzzes or they mention a work trip, I feel that familiar anxiety creeping in. Therapy has helped. I'm working through it. But I'll never forget the feeling of realizing the person I loved, the person I'd built a life with, had been lying to me every single day for over a year. It's been 2 years now. Chris reached out once to apologize. I didn't respond. Some betrayals are unforgivable, and this was one of them. And that's it for this video. Thank you for listening.